As soon as Khan commanded his subordinates to equip their respective armors and attack the members of the hero's party. Everyone got out of the formation and targeted each member of the opponent team. Soon, after pushing them afar from the middle of this 50 kilometers radius, the battlefield was divided into 8 parts. For safekeeping, Khan sent Vanessa with Armin, who was fully capable of both healing and protecting her with his skills. The main purpose was to let her recover peacefully while they kept everyone at bay. And this is how the real battle began. At one corner of the battlefield flew a 4-meter-tall green orc battle-axe warrior whose opponent was none other than a 3-meter-tall human donning a red armor. The former was a second-stage saint, while the latter was only a being comparable to a first-stage saint. Tamik was now facing Jugram, the Hellblazer general who was one of the hard hitters of Khan's group. The main reason why Jugram chose Tamik to fight was because both of them were Berserker-class warriors, and the most important part was that Tamik could use Ice Element whilst Jugram had the Chaos Element that thrived on battle and blood of the enemies. On top of it, Jugram was associated with Hellfire because of his superior Chaos Demon bloodline. One held a battle-axe while the other used a giant's word. This Hellfire was many times more potent and powerful compared to people with the normal fire element. If someone like Blackwell stood against Tamik, then it would be a long and dragged-out battle instead of a head-on clash. "You stood very proudly that day after our party made a scene," spoke Tamik, who was taller than average orcs. At this moment, he spoke about the time when the hero's party caused trouble in front of Throck's main company building. "And who are you again?" asked Jugram in an overbearing tone. "Rumble." Tamik let out his green and blue aura as he gave a dreary look towards Jugram. The latter just insulted him by hinting that he wasn't even someone worth remembering. "TCH, a weak trash dares to talk down on me? And a human at that?" He spoke in a scornful voice. "I'm a peak second stage saint while you're only a peak first stage saint. You're overestimating yourself by trying to fight with me," said Tamik as he gave a contemptuous look to Jugram. "That would indeed be the case if I'm not in my true form. But now that Master has permitted me to use the new gear, let's duke it out," replied Jugram. Boom! A loud explosion filled the surrounding 2 kilometers region as Jugram revealed his full aura and summoned his new armor and the giant's word Throck made for him using the guardian dragon's body, hide, claws and horns. Rustle! Rustle! The land and trees on the ground instantly caught fire after Jugram revealed his full aura, and now he was donning his new legendary rank gear set and weapon. A greatly reinforced black and red armor with sharp and pointed yellow extensions coming out from here covered Jugram from head to toe. And in his hand was a crimson-red giant's word that looked like a weapon of some demon lord as it was covered in the layer of hellfire and blood at the same time. "Master, can you lend me that system of yours to get details of the effects of my new armor and weapon?" asked Jugram to Khan, who floated in the air 20 kilometers away. "System, use me as a medium and give them all details and information about their stats, their abilities, ranks of the skills and effects of their own weapons and armors through telepathy link ability," commanded Khan. "Command accepted. Beginning analysis. Analysis complete," replied System in its usual lifeless and robotic voice. Jugram then asked, "Tell me, System, what buffs and enhancements I have now," ordered Jugram. The system detects that the new armor and the weapon are capable of absorbing and help General Jugram use his bloodline and true legendary rank form specifics abilities without fully transforming. Although those abilities will have only 50% of effectiveness, range and attack damage output, the user will be able to still use them without transforming, reported the system. "Good. Means I don't need to always fight in my true form. This way, I can battle without revealing my origin as a variant monster," spoke Jugram as he smirked. The very next moment, his red and fiery aura covered his body and the armor and the giant's word started absorbing it without wasting the smallest bit. And right before Tamik's eyes, Jugram's appearance started to change. The short, black-haired Jugram went under a form of transmutation while expelling a chaotic aura out of his body. "Argurg!" roared Jugram like a monster who just made a battle cry. Boom! Another burst of chaotic aura full of hellfire filled 1 kilometer of radius, and finally, Jugram's new and terrifying appearance was revealed. He now had two big black and red horns that leaked fire coming out the sides of his head. Both sides of his horns joined together and formed a band over his forehead. Now, Jugram's eyes glowed dark red with no iris in them, while his once black hair now turned into shoulder-length white hair similar to how Khan had long white hair in his Azura mode in Flavit City when he fought against Solomon. And around Jugram's entire body was an aura of scalding hot hellfire. Just then, the system started giving him details. Following are the statistics of General Jugram, including the effects of the Balrog armor set and Ares Giant's Word. Name Jugram. Species: Diablos, Variant Superior Chaos Demon. Job: Hellblazer, Legendary Rank. Rank: Legendary Rank. Level: 294. Strength: 28,760. Agility: 19,936. Dexterity: 17,658. Defense: 14,510. Mana: 9,371. Following are the strongest abilities and skills the general is already in possession of. King of Fire, Saint Rank. Marauder King, Saint Rank. Wrath of Vajra, Saint Rank. Frenzy Berserker, SSS Rank. Rage Demon, SSS Rank. Hell Domain, Saint Rank. Bloodstorm, SSS Rank. Chaos Emperor, Saint Rank. Bloodline True Demon. Current bloodline purity, 57%. The system gave Jugram his basic information first. But as soon as he heard the full effects of the Balrog armor set and Ares Giant's Word, he gave a wide smirk to Tamik and openly challenged him for a battle by pointing his weapon at the orc. Let's dance. Jugram challenged Tamik in his own style as soon as he heard the effects of his new armor and Giant's Word from Khan's system. Following are the effects of the legendary rank Balrog armor set. Bloodline Transformation allows the host Jugram to infuse his Chaos Demon bloodline into the armor, thus unlocking all of his abilities that could be previously used only in his true form. Hell Domain, King of Fire and Chaos Emperor can now be used without transforming into the Diablo's form. All the physical stats and attack damage output has been doubled while using the Balrog armor set. Limit Breaker. The suppression of 20 levels in the host stats has been halved. Now, General Jugram can use a total of 80% original strength in his legendary rank form. Reported the system. This also explained the transformation of Jugram suddenly growing those two fiery horns and white hair as part of the true demon bloodline effect. As for his new dark red Giant's Word Ares, this legendary rank Giant's Word was a 2.5-meter long weapon made for butchering and chopping off dozens of enemies with a single swing. Forget defending. Just the impact from this weapon could send the enemies flying. The weapon itself gave an eerie and dreadful feeling just from the design that had a demonic skull on the guard while two bat-like wings coming out of it. With the dark red blade itself, it looked like the weapon of a demon king that was thirsty for blood. Following are the effects of Ares Giant's Word. Blood Sacrifice allows the host to absorb the blood of the enemies to reinforce the weapon and increase its attack power with time. The more blood absorbed from the target, the higher chances of applying a laceration effect on Ares, which will increase the bleeding effect on the enemies. Apostle of War. The more time spent by the host using this weapon during a battle and more critical hits landed on the opponents, the higher critical damage and total damage will be delivered against an enemy. Declared the system. For someone like Jugram who thrived on battle, both Balrog armor and Ares were the best tailor-made sets for him. By no means did it fail in front of Khan's Dracos armor and Lucifer in any way. Tamik was thoroughly infuriated at Jugram after being treated like a weak opponent by the enemy despite him being obviously stronger. However, he hadn't made a move yet because not only Jugram's armor and Giant's Word gave him an instinctual fear as soon as they were revealed, but his transformation where he grew horns and appeared like a war god also made him become cautious. While he was contemplating how to approach Jugram in a battle, the latter had no intention to give him time to think. Jugram had already watched Tamik fight through Khan's shadow, and he knew about all the skills of the enemy. Clang! two massive weapons of both the saints clashed, and the impact of a frozen battle-axe against a fiery red giant's word. Blades of massive icicles formed around Tamek, and he quickly slashed the battle-axe to cut Jugram in half. Ching! Jugram was pushed a few hundred meters back. This was a battle of saints. Even a small swing of the weapon associated with world energy and their respective elements was enough to kill thousands of people with a single strike. Thus, just the aftershocks were enough to push your enemies few hundred meters away. No time playing around. I'll finish it quickly, spoke Jugram, and decided to go all out because soon there was going to be another battle. He quickly activated Hell Domain from the get-go, and a massive 2.5-kilometer wide infernal domain instantly appeared around them as the whole surrounding was filled with scorching red hellfire. This was his special saint rank ability that helped him create a 5 kilometers wide battlefield filled with hellfire. All the enemies in this field would have their strength and defense reduced by 75%. But because he wasn't in his true form, the current limit was 2.5 kilometers, while the Tamek only lost 37.5% of his defense. Jugram activated his Hellblazer legendary class effect. The temperature of the surrounding 2.5 kilometers was instantly raised to 250 degrees Celsius. Tamek in return summoned an ice blizzard using his skills in 1 kilometer radius and tried to protect himself from this intense heat that was chipping down his strength. But little did he know that once both Hell Domain skill and Hellblazer class effect were activated together, the defensive properties of all the armors, weapons, and artifacts from the enemy side would be decreased by 50%. Under the influence of the Hell Domain, unless the weapons and armors had ice attributes and elemental properties, they would start melting after a few minutes. But this didn't mean Tamek was impervious to these attacks, just that he would last longer than those without ice elemental gear and affinity. While Tamek was using the world energy and various skills to protect himself from the hellfire, Jugram quickly activated Frenzy Berserker skill. This was a SSS rank skill where Jugram could enter a frenzied state for 40 minutes, during which the strength and defense stats would also be raised by 300% while the attack damage would increase by 600%. Means Jugram, who already had double the physical stats because of Balrog armor, now received 6 times more strength while attacking. But as if this wasn't enough, Jugram decided to use Marauder King, which bypassed 80% of an enemy's physical defenses. This skill was only usable by those who used a greatsword, giant's word, or a battle-axe. So only Khan, Jugram, and Blackwell could use it in their group. And as a result, Jugram launched a barrage of slashing attacks filled with hellfire on already struggling Tamek, whose entire body was steadily losing world energy, because he was trying to protect himself from the hellfire. And because Jugram was using his peak-level berserker skills that were far superior than his own, Tamek started losing grip of his battle-axe and also received lots of injuries in the meantime. But soon, he noticed that the blood that fell from his wounds wasn't dropping on the ground but flew towards Ares, as the giant's word was absorbing it. As time passed, the weapon of his enemy was landing even fiercer and more powerful hits. And finally, after 30 minutes of battle, Tamek ran out of world energy. His expression was completely haggard, and he was sweating profusely while the bleeding on his body increased because of Ares' blood sacrifice and Apostle of War effect. Jugram was already a better and more experienced fighter than him. Unlike Tamek, who learned his skills in an academy, Jugram learned and perfected his skills on a real battlefield. Shatter! Tamek was left speechless as Jugram made a powerful horizontal slash with Ares and shattered his epic rank battle-axe covered in frost like breaking some thin glass. But before the disbelief in his eyes subsided, Jugram suddenly leaped higher and quickly plunged Ares into Tamek's neck. "Urgurg!" groaned Tamek as his own blood started choking him. However, in the following moments, Ares started absorbing all the blood from Tamek's body as it was thirsty from ages. Jugram then forced down Ares fully and cut Tamek in half without speaking a word or showing mercy. Even in death, Tamek's mind was utterly shocked because he still couldn't accept that he was killed by Jugram, who was 1 rank below him and supposedly 5 times weaker than him. With a horrified countenance, his body fell from the sky on the ground while Jugram was looking at other battles with Ares on his shoulder, completely unbothered by the fact that he just killed a second-stage saint as he spoke in an exasperated voice. "What a boring battle. While Jugram was done with killing Tamik, a second-stage saint, on the exact opposite side of his battlefield that was still burning as an aftermath of Hell Domain activated by the Hellblazer General, was an ongoing clash between a mage and a tank. Strong gales of visible high-pressured wind blades and spears spread over a 3 kilometers radius bombarded against a shield held by a 3-meter-tall human hybrid who had 2 large bull-like brown horns coming out of the sides of his head. Blackwell was now facing a dark elf mage from the hero's party. Whether it was Rocco's or the Vulcan Empire, dark elves were extremely rare and even rarer among the saints. However, the one faced by the Abyss Knight General was a wind elemental saint magician, and he was currently being suppressed by the barrage of the wind blades and spears launched by this opponent. I, Rodden Wizdakar, will not lose to a mere tank who can't even touch me, spoke this dark elf with pride. Although Blackwell managed to push him to this end of the battlefield by making a surprise attack previously. Now that he had collected himself, Rodden had taken command of the battle. In actuality, Blackwell was an earth elemental primordial titan. This mage named Rodden excelled in using wind magic skills and spells. Even the massive maelstrom that had surrounded and also secluded their battle from the outside world was no different than a dome of wind elemental spells and constructs that incessantly attacked Blackwell, forcing him to retreat from time to time. Based on his characteristics and elemental affinity, Blackwell was only weak against 3 elements: darkness, lightning, and wind. On top of it, the opponent also was a long-range attacker with excellent speed and maneuverability in a battle. So in simple words, Rodden was his natural nemesis. But as soon as Khan gave the order to the system to let all the subordinates have access to detailed information about their new armors and weapons, "System, give me details," he ordered. Following are the stats of the General Blackwell. Name Blackwell. Species: Kronos, Variant Titan. Job: Abyss Knight. Ancient rank. Rank: Legendary rank. Level: 297. Strength: 29,204. Agility: 21,894. Dexterity: 17,327. Defense: 41,985. Mana: 22,628. Following are the skills and abilities. Titan Physique, SSS rank. Elemental Durability, SSS rank. Titan's Rage, SSS rank. Marauder King, SSS rank. Wrath of Vajra, SSS rank. Terrain Manipulation, SSS rank. Titan Descent, SSS rank. Accelerated Regeneration, SS rank. Earth Sense, SS rank. Mineral Control, SSS rank. Transmute Minerals, SS rank. Bloodline, Primordial Titan. Current bloodline purity, 32%, reported the system. Good. Now let's see the effects of my new gear, he said. Blackwell also instantly changed into his new Atlas armor set while he equipped Aegis Shield and Heracles Battleaxe just with a simple thought. Boom! A massive burst of brown aura shook the flow of the maelstrom and pushed back Rodden, who flew higher than his enemy in the air. And as the aura subsided, Blackwell was revealed in a completely different armor and weapons that gave exuded overbearing and highly dense pressure. After Blackwell infused his bloodline similar to how Jugram did after summoning his gear, the appearance took a drastic turn. When Throck presented the Atlas armor back then, it was only a dark gray armor, but now when infused with Blackwell's Titan bloodline, the changes become very noticeable. A 3-meter-tall massive and ripped man was covered in a thick layer of armor from head to toe. On his head was a golden-brown helmet that had 2 horns coming out from the top, belonging to the Titan subordinate himself. This helmet had only openings for his eyes and mouth, while it appeared to be made of very sturdy material. Blackwell's entire torso was covered in the thick dark gray and golden yellow patterned armor that not only looked sturdy but also made him look like a murder machine on its way to destroy an entire army. The gauntlets, the shoulder pads, and the chest area had golden brown design outlines, while the rest was made of dragon's claws and hide with the hint of red glowing patterns, as if a volcano was moving underneath. The waist had a reinforced yellow belt and his legs were covered with greaves and sabotants that would help him cement his standing on the ground. Compared to his previous appearance, Blackwell now looked like the endgame boss of a video game himself. Even if you brought hundreds of players, you still wouldn't be able to kill this type of tank. Details, he commanded in a stoic voice. Following are the effects of the Atlas armor set. Immovable mountain allows the host Blackwell to create a defensive barrier made of earth elemental attribute by harnessing the physical composition and rigidity of the ground and terrain in 5 kilometers radius without needing to use the user's own mana or world energy. The stronger and sturdier composition of the nearby terrain, the stronger this barrier will be. Iron Will. The longer period of time faced by the user Blackwell while defending against enemy attacks, the more defense buff will be added to his physical stats. Every 10 minutes will add 10% of defense that will be stacked on the user's stats with passing time. Replied the system. Good. Means I can drag this battle for a long until I accomplish my main goal. He spoke in a masculine voice and looked at Rodden as he used Aegis to cover his front. Till now, Blackwell was only defending against the Wind Magician. And he didn't attack the enemy even once for a very good reason. Because Rodden was a wind elemental enemy, even if he wanted to kill the Dark Elf. This guy excelled in fleeing using his skills. But there was a reason why Khan told Blackwell to target this mage despite having a total disadvantage against this enemy who was proficient in long-range attacks and spells. If Blackwell was being honest, it was a very simple reason but also a bit childish reason. And that was target practice. Inside a literal tornado, Blackwell firmly faced Rodden who had the high ground. The high altitude as they fought in the sky under the 3 kilometers wide battlefield that was now filled with high-pressured wind blades, spears, a variety of spells, and now, the uprooted trees and plants from the ground had also entered the fray as the Dark Elf attacked the Kronos general from all sides periodically. An unscrupulous expression appeared on Rodden's face as he saw his enemy struggling against the barrage of his powerful spells and attacks. The tank warrior Blackwell was still moving in circles as he defended against turbid wind attacks that attacked him in no particular order. So the Dark Elf was elated as he felt a sense of superiority in his mind. But unbeknownst to the Wind Magician Saint, Blackwell was hatching different plans of his own after infusing Aegis and Heracles with his bloodline. Give me the details on Aegis and Heracles, commanded Blackwell. Aegis was a 2-meter large dark gray shield with a golden-brown head of a dragon at the top center region. It had an extremely sturdy and rugged body along with small spikes poking out of the borders that allowed it to not only protect the user but also be used to damage and attack the enemies when needed. Following are the effects and powers of the shield Aegis. Gluttony. Aegis shield now has the ability to absorb the damage received from attacks and spells and convert it into its own defense to reinforce itself. In simple words, the shield will become unbreakable even against extremely strong attacks after a prolonged battle. Royal Guard. Aegis shield has the ability to store the elemental attacks and naturally create resistance to that particular element with time. Means in front of a stronger opponent who also has elemental advantage, the user Blackwell will be able to bypass this disadvantage after defending against their attacks until Aegis is completely immune against that element. Reported the system. Now that's more like it, as expected of my mentor. This shield would turn out to be extremely useful in a prolonged battle or an open war against multiple enemies. Even someone stronger than me won't be able to oppress me for long with Aegis in my hands. He spoke inwardly and rejoiced after hearing the effects of his legendary rank shield made by Throck from the Guardian Dragon's Horn. But this wasn't the end of it all. Soon, the system resounded in his head again as soon as he looked at the massive battle-axe in his right hand. Heracles was also a dark gray-colored massive 2.5-meter tall battle-axe. But after getting infused with Blackwell's Titan bloodline, the intrinsic patterns on the battle-axe also turned golden-brown like the Atlas armor. Now it gave an oppressive aura of authority and dominance. Just the aura alone was dreadful enough to strike fear in the hearts of his enemies. Following are the effects of the battle-axe Heracles. The 12 labors. Heracles has the ability to not only attack at great strength by doubling the damage based on the original strength of the user, but it will accumulate General Blackwell's Earth Elemental aura on the places it has attacked. If attacked on an enemy, it will inflict their body with a debuff that will slow down their physical movement. If the hits have landed too many times, it will trigger an effect that will leave the enemy stunned and paralyzed for some time. In Form System, this effect suffered from Heracles would make Blackwell's enemies unable to move and paralyzed. During that period, the enemies will be no different than defenseless babies, easy to kill like cutting grass. For the next 30 minutes, Blackwell only defended and acted like he was suffering a great deal of damage and lost a lot of stamina. In reality, he was letting Aegis build up complete immunity against the wind element because this immunity would be forever stored in Aegis and would stay as part of its characteristics even in future. Thus, he was using this chance to save time. And finally, after he was done, Blackwell decided that it was time to make the move. At this point, Rodden had depleted 80% of his mana and world energy by constantly attacking Blackwell using his skills. And also this Typhoon skill of his was active since the very beginning of this battle, which also played a big part in it. This whole fight was actually good training for Blackwell, who was undefeated in defense but lacked range in attacking long-distance enemies, so Rodden was the best candidate for Blackwell to create some battle tactics. And now, the Abyss Knight General finally revealed his hand. Finally, as his world energy was coming to end, Rodden realized that outside of the Typhoon he summoned were hundreds of massive spears made of stones, boulders, and ground soil. Meanwhile, the whole battlefield itself was encompassed under a sandstorm. Rodden was left speechless because he never noticed that he was actually jailed inside Blackwell's own cage. All this time, the general wasn't just defending by carefully creating this domain using his terrain manipulation skill that allowed him to control all earth elemental objects in the world using telekinesis. This was the Mountain Titan's exclusive ability which he got after merging with it. During the battle, the maelstrom of wind elemental blades and spells had also destroyed the ground below and brought in a lot of stones, sand and soil as Rodden was bombarding Blackwell with his spells. But without even realizing, Blackwell was secretly manipulating these very objects and carefully controlling them, waiting for the moment when Rodden lost most of his mana and world energy reserves. However, Rodden was also an experienced mage, so he quickly summoned another windstorm and decided to use it to create an exit and escape this cage. But when he tried to create wind spells, something unexpected happened and he quickly analyzed the root cause. Blackwell was using the sand in the air and ordered them to rotate in the opposite direction of the wind spells and attacks the Dark Elf created, instantly breaking their momentum and making Rodden unable to properly cast the skills. In simple words, Blackwell rendered Rodden useless by letting him think that he was besting the opponent without even sensing the fact that he was providing the tank enemy with a weapon using his own spells and techniques. However, now that he couldn't even use his spells and ran out of his mana and world energy, he was as defenseless as one could be. Stab! Stab! Without even being unable to sense the incoming attacks in the sandstorm, Rodden was pierced by a stone spear in his right shoulder and left thigh from behind. Ah! He wailed in agony. But the next moment, Blackwell quickly appeared in front of him and swung Heracles, quickly cutting off his left arm. Arg! He screamed in excruciating pain. But before he could recover from the pain, Blackwell unsummoned Heracles and picked up Aegis with both hands. No! Please let me go! He made a final plea. Bang! Without thinking for a second, Blackwell started bashing the elf's head until blood spurted like a fountain, and his skull was crushed while brain matter splattered in the air. Blackwell didn't have any victorious feeling at the moment because although the battle took some time, he had to stand on his guard and only made a few moves before he mercilessly killed the first stage Saint Magician. Blackwell looked towards Rodden's falling body in the air and spoke in a discontent voice. And here I was, looking for a real challenge. As soon as Blackwell was done with taking care of his opponent, aka Rodden, the Dark Elf Magician, he too shifted his gaze towards the middle of this 50 kilometers radius battlefield. His gaze fixated on the happenings at the center. Meanwhile, on the southern end of this massive isolation barrier was a scene where two enemies were probing each other by exchanging various moves. Flap! Flap! In the air was a first-stage Saint female archer with the head of a raven and two black wings on her back. From the first impression, one could tell that it was Michaela, a hybrid archer of the Tengu species and one of the two Saint-rank archers of the hero's party. And before Michaela, floated her opponent, who was a human with a black mask covering half of his face from the left side and had dark green eyes. His long shoulder-length black hair fluttered slowly, while he was donning a pitch-black lightweight assassin's gear with two red daggers in his hand. This assassin, who was effortlessly dodging dozens of lightning element arrows, was none other than Ronin, Khan's left-hand man, who was also the main person in charge of gathering intel, setting schemes and thinking of ways to overtake the enemies like a war tactician. But now, this assassin, who didn't have a single long-range attack skill, was facing an archer who had excellent speed, dexterity, elemental advantage, and long attack range. Everyone knew how assassins only had the advantage in a battle as long as they were not sensed, exposed, and had the opportunity to land the one decisive strike to kill a target. But once they were out in the open, all of their advantage in a battle was gone. In simple words, it was like Ronin was fighting the one enemy he was most vulnerable against among all the classes. After receiving Khan's command, Ronin also asked the system about his current stats. Following are the statistics and abilities. Name: Ronin. Species: Thanatos. Variant: Soul Reaper. Job: Spirit Assassin. Legendary rank. Rank: Legendary rank. Level: 295. Strength: 19,459. Agility: 25,169. Dexterity: 23,620. Defense: 7,890. Mana: 12,378. Following are the abilities and skills. Spiritual Sense, SSS rank. Poison Va Venom Immunity, Legendary rank. Spiritual Replica, Saint rank. Phase Shift, Saint rank. Soul Collector, Legendary rank. Quicksilver, SSS rank. Phantasm, Saint rank. Invisibility, SSS rank. Fear Toxin, SSS rank. Grappling Extension, SSS rank. Shadow Walk, SSS rank. Hunter's Domain, Saint rank. Bloodline Vilgax. Current bloodline purity: 100% reported the system. Finally, Ronin summoned his new gear and armors, infused his bloodline, and quickly, his entire look changed. Even Michaela was taken aback by this sudden and saw her enemy's appearance change instantly. A slim man donning a compact assassin gear that was a combination of black, white, and yellow. Many parts in this armor were made of black dragon hide, including the hood. The black mask, which covered his face horizontally, had yellow outlines. The gauntlets, the shin, boots, and the shoulder had golden yellow and pointy parts coming out that were no different than sharp daggers themselves. And on the back, 3 long black stripes came out that looked very similar to the grappling extensions Ronin had in his real legendary rank Thanatos form, just many times smaller. Overall, the Shinigami armor set equipped by Ronin was the best assassin armor set one could get that didn't hinder the user's speed, but rather looked like it would enhance it instead. Following are the effects of the Shinigami armor. The Eminence in Shadow. The Shinigami armor will enhance the user's speed, dexterity, and perception of time by 200%. General Ronin will get an additional 50% boost in attack power while using this armor during nighttime. Note: Spirit Replica, Invisibility, and Phase Shift skills are now accessible to the General without transforming into the real form. Reported the system. Good. Means I already have an advantage in speed compared to her. That way I can fend off her attacks and those arrow attack skills easily. And with my increased speed, I can close off the distance between us as well. Thought Ronin as he sidestepped and dodged an arrow aimed at his head. Ronin then quickly brandished his new daggers that too had a change in appearance. The long daggers that previously had only black curved blades now glimmered green, while all the patterns and runes on them turned golden yellow. The twin daggers now looked like the sharpest blades that could even cut through a boulder swiftly. Following are the effects of the Erebus daggers. Death is a mercy. Erebus daggers will improve General Ronin's critical hit chance by 80% and critical damage by 30% during a battle. Once hit with it, The fear toxin that was mixed with them using the user's bloodline would apply the same effect as the fear toxin, and the opponent will start hallucinating, greatly affecting their senses and response time. No time to die. Once used against an enemy via a surprise attack, the daggers will activate a stun effect that will incapacitate the target for 10 seconds regardless of their rank. However, the hit must be critical and landed without the enemy noticing the incoming attack. Note: Shinigami armor and Erebus daggers can also be used during phase shift and invisibility ability, since they're now extensions of General Ronin's body after being infused with his bloodline. Revealed the system again. I see. I was going to overwhelm her with my speed alone, but now, I must test these daggers in a different way. Thought the spirit assassin general. Ronin kept evading the barrage of attacks made by Michaela, as she launched hundreds of electrified arrows in succession using her epic rank bow and skills of an archer. Just then, Ronin formed a perfect plan that would help him test his new armor set and the daggers while he met perfect conditions to see their highest output. He glanced at the Tengu archer, who flew a few hundred meters higher than him using her wings, and spoke in a solemn voice as he gave his new battle strategy a name. The early bird catches the worm. A perfect plan formed in Ronin's mind to take down Michaela, who had the advantage in terms of elemental attacks, long-range attacks and distance between them, while her opponent lacked in all three of them. As Michaela launched another volley of arrows on Ronin, he sprinted forward using Quicksilver skill. This was a quick movement skill created by Khan, and only Omega and Ronin were qualified when he imparted his skills to the subordinates. And just within another second, he crossed the distance of 100 meters and reached 500 meters range from the Tengu archer's location. "No, you don't!" shouted Michaela, and soon, over 300 lightning elemental arrows appeared on both her sides and instantly launched themselves towards Ronin. However, instead of trying to evade them, the assassin instead threw over a dozen bombs at the arrows. Boom! A loud noise filled the surrounding 2-kilometer radius as the small bombs and the arrows collided. In the following moments, a massive white cloud burst from the point of impact and instantly spread across the battlefield. This white cloud of smoke surrounded the opponent and encircled the 1-kilometer radius in just a few seconds. Using smoke bombs against someone who can fly higher, what an idiot, said Michaela and flapped her wings. But before she could move, she sensed a murderous intent coming from behind her back. Clang! Ronin's daggers clashed against Michaela's bow after he used the Shadow Strike skill and instantly appeared behind her. The female archer was quickly forced to retreat a few hundred meters in the smoke cloud. Next, 5 pointed extensions that looked like the tip of a spear appeared from different directions and tried to stab Michaela. But in the end, she was an archer who also had sensory skills of her own. She quickly used one of their trump cards, and the next moment, a whirlwind full of lightning creatures appeared around her, instantly warding off these hidden attacks coming within the smoke. Croak! 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 The female archer just used one of her bloodline abilities and summoned over 300 ravens who had blue lightning roaming all around their bodies. Their loud croaks instantly echoed in the 5 kilometers of area. Because of the wind pressure, the smoke cleared in the 500 meters radius, and finally, Michaela saw the assailants who attacked her from the smoke cloud. Gasp! She gasped as soon as she saw her attackers that she barely managed to detect in time. Her expression completely baffled, and a sense of dread appeared on her countenance. Because at this moment, she was surrounded by 5 different Ronins. Is that a Mirage skill? No, even Saint rank assassins can't make more than 3 Mirage copies when they're at first stage Saint rank. Looks like my opponent is a talented and formidable fighter, she thought, and quickly commanded her lightning ravens to target and attack these 5 Ronins encircling her. In truth, these were the doppelgangers created by Ronin to aid him in battle. Among their group, only Khan and Ronin had this ability. Even she understood that 4 of them were fakes while 1 was real, and she didn't wish to give her enemy a chance to distract her and then attack sneakily. As the battle progressed in all 5 directions, Michaela ordered her ravens to attack fiercely, while he shot her killer moves one after another whenever she found a Ronin struggling against her flock of summoned ravens. Clang! Shing! Boom! Noises of metal clashing filled the surroundings, and finally, Michaela successfully killed one of the copies. She properly isolated and kept each copy engaged in battle with her summons and launched lethal strikes whenever she got the chance. But during that time, each copy kept throwing those smoke bombs towards her to blur her vision, and she had to change her location too many times in just 10 minutes. Bang! Finally, the fourth copy died and disappeared into black smoke, and only the real Ronin was left. Arg! What's happening? Asked Michaela to herself as she felt her sense dulling out of a sudden and her body movements greatly slowing. Soon, the world around her started giving off an eerie feeling, and a sense of impending threat appeared in her mind. No, he could be using some skill. I need to kill him quickly, she thought, and launched his biggest summoned arrows and most fatal archery skills while the summoned ravens surrounded the real Ronin from every direction and angle. Stab! Amidst the frenzy and chaos, an arrow pierced right through Ronin's chest and instantly electrocuted him on the spot. But the female Tengu archer was not in the mood of taking risks. She launched another volley of attacks, and with a bang, a large hole was created in Ronin's chest as he was shot dead by the enemy. His eyes lost the light in them and his body started falling towards the ground. Stab! Another arrow pierced his heart, and Michaela used her Saint Aura to pull his body close to her. What a useless fight. You're as weak as they come. She spoke in a content and victorious voice as Ronin's corpse flew in front of her. Stab! Stab! But before she could revel in victory for long, two daggers suddenly stabbed her head and her heart from behind. Her body was instantly frozen and hundreds of black veins spread on the exiting tips of the daggers. Michaela didn't even realize the fact that she died, only having a shocked expression because of the pain. And finally, the real Ronin appeared from behind her, giving a look of disappointment through his now golden eyes. Although it looked like Ronin was toyed around by Michaela throughout the entire battle, one couldn't be any more wrong. First, he tested her senses and reaction time when he threw the smoke bombs the first time and appeared right behind her to make a lethal strike. But after he sensed that Michaela was equally matched with him, even with his buffed speed and dexterity because of her own senses, he decided to use decoys. After Michaela attacked the doppelgangers, each of them threw smoke bombs at her. But unlike before, these weren't just normal smoke bombs but the ones made with his own fear toxin. This was the ability that Khan and Ronin often used during their time in Flavit City when Khan was hunting down criminals and the noble clan heirs while masquerading as Azrael. It not only made the enemies hallucinate but also affected their sensory organs and abilities. And in this battle, whenever Michaela started breathing the smoke in after the doppelgangers threw those bombs at her, her senses were being affected with time. And when the final doppelganger died, Ronin allowed it to keep its physical form, which made the female archer think that she finally got him. But the truth was that Ronin had been using the invisibility skill that he got after merging with Vilgax. This ability made his entire existence undetectable unless one was above the 5th stage saint rank. And right when Michaela let her guard down and her senses were greatly affected because of the fear toxin, he used Erebus daggers that had Jormungandr, the basilisk descendant's venom coated on them, which caused those black veins on her body, making sure she was deader than dead. Ronin perfectly planned every step of this confrontation and killed an enemy who had an advantage over him in every aspect using his battle tactician mind. Michaela's corpse dropped from the sky and Ronin gave an unimpressed gaze as he looked at the crashing corpse. You're slow, even when you're falling. Another member of the hero's party fell in battle against the newly arrived saints, who seemed to be having ample battle experience as they effectively took down their respective opponents. It hadn't even been an hour since they showed up, but already 3 members of their party were killed. No! Michaela! Shouted a succubus enchantress in grief, as she saw the closest member who battled 10 kilometers away from her location getting killed by an assassin from the enemy group. Boom! However, before she could react, red pentagram-shaped archaic magic formations appeared 2 kilometers high in the air and quickly created a 10 kilometers wide isolation barrier, completely sealing off any areas to exit and also suppressing this enchantress body to a small degree. You bastard! Exclaimed Edna, a second-stage Saint Enchantress from the hero's party who was also the heiress of her clan. As for the origin of this isolation barrier, it was cast by the only subordinate who excelled in using magic, aka Cyril, the necromancer. Edna was an enchantress, This class excelled in using magic formations to perform different purposes. Whether it was attacking, defending, or enhancing a team member's attacks and damage output, Enchanter class was a perfect support class for a team as they could not only use various spells and skills of their own but also aid their teammates from time to time. Compared to a normal magician, they were hard to come by because their class needed excellent control of mana and in-depth knowledge of magic formations that couldn't be messed up while casting them. Even someone like Cyril excelled in using 6 different elements, but his knowledge was subpar compared to Edna because he also had another hidden class and never felt the need to dig deep. The only magic formations he was proficient in using were isolation, invisibility, and suppression formations that he often used to create a barrier just like the one he cast just now. Edna, on the other end, was infuriated to see her friend, who was the closest to her among all the party members, die so horrifically. Yet, instead of avenging her, she is dragged into a fight by this first-stage Saint Magician in white and purple robes who wore glasses and had a blue scepter. Meanwhile, Cyril was looking at his own stats at this moment, paying no heed to the curses of the succubus whose bosoms were half exposed. Following are the stat and abilities of General Cyril. Name: Cyril. Species: Necromancer, Variant Undead Summoner. Job: Apostle of Necromancy, Ancient Rank Class. Rank: Legendary Rank. Level: 298. Strength: 7,224. Agility: 8,237. Dexterity: 9,361. Defense: 6,289. Mana: 21,679. Following are the skills and abilities. Monarch of the Dead, Saint Rank. Darkness Barrier, SSS Rank. Shadow Blades Barrage, SSS Rank. Void Realm, Saint Rank. Rapid Mana Recovery, SSS Rank. Dark Magic Absorption, SSS Rank. Following are the gifts received by General Cyril. Scythe of the Reaper, Saint Rank. Chains of Judgment, Saint Rank. Book of the Damned, Saint Rank. Note: the subordinate must be in his true form to use all 3 of these gifts. Reported the system. Good. Soon I'll become comparable to a second-stage saint. He spoke to himself. Now let's see what difference can the new gear make. Cyril also summoned his new robes and scepter. Previously, when Throck handed them their newly reforged armors and weapons from the guardian dragon's body, only he and Khan hadn't infused their auras and elements to avoid revealing their real identities. Unlike the other subordinates, Cyril had no bloodline or something of that sort. He was a pure and honest undead lich, a variant undead lich, and became a legendary rank creature through his own understanding and hard efforts, unlike the rest who were mixed with other legendary monsters and beings to cross that rank. So he could only infuse his darkness element aura. Boom! A black pillar of darkness element under this red isolation barrier. However, no one from the outside could sense or detect this sudden burst of dark magic. Edna, the one who saw this transformation, had her eyes bewildered. Dark magic was forbidden in their empire from the past 300 years, and only undeads and monsters in the wild or inside dungeons possessed it. But somehow, there was a first-stage saint who had this forbidden element associated with his body. Soon, the massive black pillar faded and the grim and oppressive aura started fading. Cyril was now donning completely pitch-black robes made from the dragon's hide. The transformed set had a hood, chestplate, gauntlets, and a waist belt as part of his armor. But even so, the defense was many times better than any other mage could possibly have in the entire Vulcan Empire. On the shoulders and chest were newly emerged small yellow skulls, and one big skull appeared on his belt as well. The entire black robe and the cloak had golden outlines and patterns while exuding a layer of dark green aura around the whole robe. Following are the effects of the Hades armor set. Speak of the Devil. Hades armor set will enhance General Cyril's mana and world energy reserves by 50% of the original stats. All the dark magic and darkness elements attacks and spells now have additional 60% effectiveness, range, and damage output. Casting time for all the spells made from dark magic has been reduced by 35%, and the activation time limit for all of them has been increased by 25%. Replied the system. Good. Means I can fight on equal terms with her even without transforming into my real form. It is better this way since Master ordered us all to not reveal our true forms unless absolutely necessary. He spoke regardless of the worry of his enemy flying 2 kilometers away from him. Hey there, exhibitionist succubus. Would you like to listen to a song? Asked Cyril. Edna was instantly riled up and responded by releasing her killing intent. It's called, said Cyril, and revealed an insidious smile. As he revealed the melody, he wanted Edna to listen to Song of the Dead. Cyril gave a dubious smile at Edna, who was already pissed off as it is with a mundane and roundabout talk. The words Song of the Dead clearly signified his true intentions. In simple words, Cyril implied that Edna was already good as dead, and then the Song of the Dead would be sung at her funeral. Edna, with her long white hair and 2 large black horns that were characteristic of a succubus, was wearing a purple cloak. On her back were 2 bat wings. To any member of the opposite sex, she would look extremely charming and enchanting. In her right hand was a long scepter with a ram's head at the top that leaked blue fire through its eye sockets. But by just looking at Edna, many would feel the popular phrase that went like this: something is definitely rising, and it isn't the shield hero. However, to an undead like Cyril, he couldn't care less if Edna was a desirable female or a shining skeleton. He'd rather get intrigued by the latter. As Edna charged her scepter and summoned 5 300 meters wide magic formations, Cyril let out a grin as he held his new scepter in hand that was named Anubis. It was a golden scepter with a circular curve of a half moon. And along the curve were 3 golden spherical runes that shone brightly. Following are the effects of the Anubis scepter. Feather of Mot. Grant General Cyril an ability to corrupt the enemy spells and attacks, breaking them from the inside and decreasing their total attack damage and effectiveness by 30%. Amit's Judgment. General Cyril can now create wormholes of dark magic and darkness element that can devour and restructure the enemy's elemental spells and attacks to either use as mana or world energy supply for himself, or use it to counter the attacker instead. Revealed the system. Ah, great. No wonder Master sent me to fight her. I'm basically invincible now, spoke Cyril as he let out a diabolical laugh. Both the Hades armor and now the Anubis scepter gave Cyril plenty of long-term boost that will also increase with his ranks and levels as they increase with his stats. Anubis scepter itself would be extremely useful in this fight for many reasons. Khan sent Cyril to face Edna simply for 2 main reasons. 1, they had already seen how Edna was a master in using magic formations. Among their group, only Cyril had the understanding of them and could counterattack properly, unlike others who were solely weapon-related job classes, except for Armin, of course. Second, it was because Edna excelled in light magic. It was the only element that was not only rare even among saints but also the biggest weakness of dark magic. On top of it, Cyril also had most of the dark magic and darkness elemental skills that Khan had. So Khan simply sent Cyril to collect data for the future and check how disadvantageous it would be for them to face someone with light element affinity. Thus, Cyril was the best choice to face Edna in this battle. All right, I shall test your limits, declared Cyril as he licked his lips. Edna's mind stopped working on the spot because Cyril was going to test her mettle even though she was still 1 level below her. No self-righteous saint would ignore such a remark. Little did she know that Cyril was calling her a mean name because of the 2 black horns on her forehead and said that he was going to test her limits because he was looking for a comprehensive assessment of an enemy with an affinity for the light element. But because of his twisted use of words and his smirk that made him look like a bad guy, Edna felt like she was being harassed. Swoosh! Swoosh! 5 different elemental beams of attacks charged from Edna's side, who was constantly chanting her spells. Cyril quickly cast the darkness barrier, which now had double the defense and range because of Hades' armor set. He quickly used Anubis to use Feathers of Mot and Amit's Judgment to decrease his spell casting time and create wormholes outside of the barrier that started engulfing the varying elemental beams of world energy that incessantly bombarded his barrier. Through those wormholes, he started absorbing the attacks and used them as an auxiliary source of world energy for his own use. Little did Edna know that she was empowering her enemy with her relentless and furious attacks while thinking of ways to kill the opponent who disrespected her just now. Soon, without adding any dramatic effects or battle strategies, Cyril was simply chipping down Edna's world energy reserves, and from time to time, he used Shadow Blade's barrage skill and launched over 1,000 blades made of dark magic that forced her to focus on defense from time to time, because she was already infuriated due to Cyril's constant banters and declarations on how he was going to perform experiments on her corpse, or how he was going to cut off her limbs and mix them with different species and stuff. She was losing her temperament. And finally, Edna came to her senses and started using light elemental attacks. A volley of beams and barrage of weapons made of light element clashed and quickly broke the darkness barrier despite the reinforcing Cyril had done, and now he was completely exposed to Edna's attacks. However, there was one key and decisive difference between their situation. Edna had barely 15% world energy left while Cyril was still at 100% because of his new personal hack called Anubis Scepter. He let Edna attack him again and again as he was conducting tests about damage received from her light element spells and attacks, like how one collects data in a research lab. "This should be enough," spoke Cyril and put away the book he was writing all the data in. However, the next second, Cyril summoned another book. Contrary to the previous one, this was 10 meters in height and floated beside him. Cyril just summoned Book of the Damned and activated its effect. His mana and world energy capacity instantly rose by 600%, and the effectiveness of all of his attacks and spells increased by 300% for a short time. Without giving a moment of respite to already tired Edna, Cyril summoned Chains of Judgment. Boom! Hundreds of black chains arose from the ground below and quickly stabbed Edna's body in multiple places, as she was already on her last straw. "Lord Axel, save me!" screamed Edna as she pleaded and wailed in agony. Axel, who was currently facing a man in a black longcoat, clearly heard her voice. He glanced at her from afar but then looked away, completely ignoring her plight. Edna's expression turned gloomy, because everyone in the hero's party already knew that Edna had fallen in love with Axel a long time ago. However, the man she wanted to be with didn't even bother to look at her when she was at death's door. "Rip! Rip!" Cyril commanded the Chains of Judgment and tore Edna into 7 different pieces. The succubus enchantress didn't even get a final chance to scream in pain because her head and lungs were already torn apart. "Hee hee hee hee!" laughed Cyril as he gazed at the falling pieces of Edna's body. A goddamn second stage saint at that, and spoke in an ominous voice, "Congratulations! You have been a great test subject." After Cyril took care of the succubus enchantress, one of the stronger ones among their party, the rest of the members, including the 4th stage saint, had a gloomy expression as their countenances turned worried. Because now, all 3 of the 2nd stage saints among their group were killed off by people who were only 1st stage saints themselves. 20 kilometers in the southeast end of this wide battlefield was a different scene, because in this skirmish there were 3 people involved unlike the first 4. However, one side that had only a Wolfkin archer was repeatedly attacking and oppressing 2 opponents who took a defensive stand from the very beginning of this battle. At this moment, Armin was facing a 1st stage Saint Wolfkin archer from the hero's party. This Wolfkin was the same archer who had tried to attack the Oakenshield Company's main building when the hero's party visited their company grounds more than a year ago. Back then, under Tamek's instigating, Folka attacked the building's entrance, but before the arrow could even land a hit, it was frozen in the air by Omega's gravity law skills. Armin was hiding in the company building back then under Khan's orders and had revealed his aura with others to ward off the hero's party. Thus, his face was unknown to Folka, and now, the latter was engaging against this healer general of Khan's group. A healer versus an archer in an open battle. Everyone knew the obvious results. However, the Blue Wolfkin had a sullen expression after seeing 4 of his allies getting killed mercilessly. Tamek, the 2nd stage berserker, fell against a human who suddenly turned into a demonic warrior. Rodden, the long-range and wind elemental expert mage, fell in a battle against a tank, completely opposite of how the battle was supposed to go. Michaela, someone who was a 2nd stage archer and a rank above him, was killed by an assassin who had no advantage against her during the fight in any way. And lastly, Edna, the strongest among the three of them, was killed by a mage who could use the forbidden dark magic. Even though Folka was in an advantageous position, he was also cautious at the moment. Winning wasn't his first priority, but rather surviving this whole ordeal was more important because their side had already lost the advantage of numbers. The only thing that stood between him and certain death was Hero of Fire and Azarog, both of whom were 3rd stage Va 4th stage saints respectively. Under their protection and assistance, Folka believed he could come out of this situation alive. As for sadness, anger, or the pain of losing his comrades, he didn't care at all. In the past 5 years alone, he knew that he was just a supporting character in the group that no one cared about. There were already 5 people stronger than him in the group, and one of them was an archer at that. He was just a substitute to fill the quota of team members. And the worst part was that he couldn't even leave the party at this point. It was always team members bootlicking the Hero of Fire every chance they got, and even someone like Edna, whom he once developed interests in, was love-struck after Axel despite him being a human. The popular guy always gets the girl even if that guy is a textbook bastard, while the calm and quiet person gets looked down on just for existing. Folka had become a background character for their group, but even he had to resort to the methods of praising the hero to maintain his relevance in the group for the sake of it. No, I'm not dying a useless death like those bastards, thought the blue wolfkin, who was 3 meters in height and had silver armor and gear for archers. But the next moment, Folka started at the second person behind this healer, who was currently standing inside a green-colored massive sphere made of wood, vines and green leaves, having a thin transparent layer like glass which made it easy to look at what was inside. Even though he wasn't a mage, he could feel that inside of this spherical construct was highly condensed and enriched life force that appeared as green aura from outside. And the person being healed and protected inside this massive sphere that floated in the air was none other than Vanessa, the princess and their main target herself. After Khan and his band of saints suddenly showed up, he ordered Armin to heal Vanessa, who was riddled with wounds and had lost all of her fighting capacity because she faced 8 saints on her own and got heavily injured after using her primordial bloodline for an entire hour. The backlash on her body, along with the injuries while having all of her world energy used up, had put her in a pitiful state. Thus, Khan let Armin heal and recover her condition as the rest of the group handled their own opponents. At this point, many of Vanessa's visible wounds had healed, but still, her mana and world energy reserves were completely depleted because she expended all of it during her primordial bird transformation. Ha ha ha! Idiots! Leaving the queen under the protection of a weak guard. If I capture her now, we might as well get an upper hand. If worse comes to worst, I could use her to escape outside of this barrier in case our side loses. It's better to have a contingency plan, thought Folka as he looked at the only weak guardian who flew in between him and Vanessa. A brown-haired human with green archaic runes spread across his forehead and arms looked silently at Folka. The moment Armin received Khan's transmission, he too asked for his current strength to the system. Following are the statistics, abilities, Va skills of General Armin. Name, Armin. Species, Erdtree, variant Yggdrasil. Job, the Pathfinder, Legendary rank class. Rank, Legendary rank. Level, 291. Strength, 7,381. Agility, 4,983. Dexterity, 23,750. Defense, 5,782. Mana, 24,709. Following are the skills and abilities. Telepathy Link, SSS rank. Life Force Restoration, SSS rank. Roots of Nature, SSS rank. Nature Control, SSS rank. Monarch of the Forest, Saint rank.
Flora và Fauna, SSS rank.
Atonement, SSS rank. Restoration, SSS rank. Guardian Spectre, SSS rank. Chain Heal, SSS rank. Elixir of Life, Saint rank. Brewing, SSS rank. Infusion, SSS rank. Resurrection, Saint rank. Soul Reformation, Legendary rank. Bloodline Edenmere. Bloodline purity. 32%. Reported the system. Good. I guess I can handle this guy on my own. Spoke Armin and quickly summoned his new armor set and healer staff. And without waiting for another second, he infused his bloodline in it and the whole appearance changed in a dozen seconds. Now, Armin was donning a lightweight armor with green hood, gauntlet and greaves, while on his torso was a black vest that appeared like it was made with dragon's hide. On the whole attire were dozens of white archaic patterns here and there, giving it more mysterious and refined look. In reality, his entire set was made of dragon's hide and only his staff was made with its horn. Following are the effects of the Nirvana armor set. Balance of life. Allows General Armin to gather life force from the plant life and wood elemental creatures regardless of their species and structure within 10 kilometers radius in order to replenish the General's life force reserves. This effect will greatly increase the user's health and will help in healing thousands of allies at once without needing external sources such as mana cores and ores. Price of Salvation. Allows General Armin to forcefully steal vitality from targeted enemies. By restructuring its composition, the General can use it to replenish his own mana and world energy reserves. Note: Resurrection, Soul Reformation, Monarch of the Forest, Guardian Spectre, Elixir of Life skill can now be used by General Armin without transforming into his true Erdtree form. Informed the system. Great! Means I'm no longer at a disadvantage in terms of life-saving skills. I will be able to survive even facing an army on my own as long as there's a forested area in 10 kilometers vicinity. He spoke in an elated tone, because at this moment, the entire battlefield was actually a vast forested region. As for the second effect, it was less useful but would help greatly in an open war with thousands of enemies. Then, he looked at the Hermes staff that had big and green jade crystal on the top, surrounded by brown vines all around its body, and was exuding life force constantly after Armin infused his bloodline. Following are the effects of the Hermes staff. One for all. Allows General Armin to use his life force to create living creatures by merging the life force with trees and wood elemental beings. All of these creations can be transformed and reconstructed based on the user's choosing and imagination. As long as the General can provide an ample supply, there's no end to how many creatures he can create. Informed the system. Amazing! The Nirvana armor and Hermes staff greatly complement each other in terms of use. The armor's effects can help me create an endless supply of life force, mana and world energy, and the staff's effect could help me create an army of my own on the spot, said Armin in an exhilarated tone. Because although he could control wood elemental creatures and plant life, they had to exist there first. He couldn't create life forms out of nothing. But now, Hermes allowed him to do just so by using his own life force as a driving medium to create and control such creatures. And Nirvana armor would not only protect him but also work like a personal power generator by stealing life force from the surrounding. Folka knocked an arrow, ready to attack this harmless and weak enemy of his. However, little did he know that Armin was neither helpless nor alone. He was a one-man army. After gaining a huge boost in skills and access to an unending supply of mana and world energy for free thanks to Nirvana armor and Hermes staff, Armin was no longer a weak link of the group. Previously, he could make use of flora and fauna around him, but Saints always battled high in the air. So there were a lot of restrictions on how he could face an opponent in an open battle. But now, things finally turned in the Pathfinder General's favor. Give the princess to me and I won't have to kill you, spoke Folka, the blue wolfkin Saint Archer after he knocked an arrow, giving one last warning. I'm tasked with protecting the princess. So if you want to touch her, you'll have to do that over my dead body, replied Armin without the slightest hint of fear in his tone. Ah, so even weaklings look down on me now, I see, said Folka, and the next moment, he raised his bow towards the two suns in the sky and shot the red glowing arrow. Shoot! Whoosh! The arrow went as far as 2 kilometers in the sky in just a few seconds. Saint Archers were no different than cavalry themselves. Their skills, range, and the damage output imbued with world energy were on a completely different level. Now, Folka was no longer holding back on his skills. Shing! Soon, the arrow reached its peak height and started descending towards Armin and Vanessa's position in the sky. But as soon as it started its descent, the arrow burst on the spot, but instead of getting destroyed, it dispersed in the 1-kilometer radius in the form of small splinters. "Not good," spoke Armin, and quickly cast a yellow-colored protection barrier over himself and Vanessa inside the wooden sphere. He could sense what was about to happen already. In the following moments, all of the 1,000 splinters quickly started transforming, and every single one of them started increasing in size as they turned into 10-meter-long arrows made of condensed and highly volatile red glowing arrows like raindrops turning into lightning bolts. That one arrow launched by Folka turned into thousands of massive arrows in just a dozen seconds. Rumble! Rumble! Armin quickly used Monarch of the Forest skill. This skill was his own exclusive ability he gained after Khan merged Armin with the legendary rank monster Ashikvatika in Verlassen fiefdom close 2 years ago. It enabled Armin to telepathically control and restructure plant life as well as wood elemental creatures as their supreme monarch. Crack! Crack! The ground instantly started cracking as hundreds of trees. Their long and deep roots coiled together and started ascending in the sky after forming a 500-meter-wide protective net covered with wood, leaves, vines, and even varieties of flowers. This veil-like net erupted and quickly covered them under the protection barrier, forming another layer of defense. Bang! Shatter! Under the intense barrage of those destructive and powerful arrows, the first protection barrier started cracking and shattered in a matter of minutes. Thud! Tuck! Tuck! The arrows that survived the previous collision struck the newly formed defensive net and clashed against the defensive veil of plant life. But soon, Folka noticed that not a single one of his arrows could pass through. Scrah! Roar! Crackle! What they? Before he could make any sense of it, a completely different scene appeared in front of his eyes. Because while he was focused on breaking through Armin's defense, hundreds of tree ants, a wood elemental creature, came into existence out of nowhere. Their bodies were mostly dark brown and green while covered in leaves and vines. However, unlike the normal tree ants, their eyes glowed green. Impossible! Are these created by him? Folka asked himself in a terrified tone. He didn't even sense when these creatures appeared around him in the battlefield on the ground. Boom! Folka hadn't even managed to come out of his daze, but suddenly, over a dozen 50 meters tall and massive tree sentinels formed around him and rose high in the sky. Dozens of glowing green orbs left Armin's body and shot themselves inside these giant tree sentinels that were twice the height and width of the colossal titan. Just like how Cyril could create his 6 guardians undead giants from thousands of bones of his undead army, Armin too could now create such gigantic creatures using the trees and plant life within the 15 kilometers radius. But this wasn't the end. Flap! Flap! Screech! Hundreds of bird-like wood elemental monsters with wings created from grass and leaves soared high in the sky. Finally, Armin, who had been hiding under the wooden protective veil, revealed himself. Armin had no attacking skills, but now he could create an army that can defend, attack, fly, and control the entire battlefield. You aren't a human, are you? Asked Vanessa, who saw everything from behind Armin. Apart from my master, no one here is a pure human. Not even that hero of fire, replied Armin to the princess as he sensed a very dangerous and horrifying aura from Axel, who was currently facing Khan in the middle of this 50 kilometers radius barrier. Vanessa also gazed in Khan's direction and asked herself, Khan, who the hell are you? Soon, a fierce battle started between Folka and Armin's army of titans. Folka faced attacks after attacks from the tree sentinels that were being created every passing minute by Armin, while from the sky, many 10 to 20 meters hawk-like monsters with glowing green bodies attacked him from all sides relentlessly. In the end, Folka was only an archer. He only had an advantage in range and firepower but had no defensive abilities or hiding skills in a battle happening in the sky. He was currently facing over 2,000 monsters who were resurrecting even after he killed them with his archery skills and abilities. Meanwhile, the main boss of this army of titans was watching this whole battle from behind the army of massive creatures like the founding titan. Folka was losing his mana and world energy as time passed while trying to evade sharp vines with thorns on them, making them akin to torture whips. But Armin wasn't slightly fazed even though he was creating more and more monsters. Stab. Rip. Finally, the 3-meter Folka was struck and pulled towards the ground by a vine whip created by a tree sentinel. Arg! He screamed in pain as the big thorns pierced and cut deep inside his body. Soon, the other tree sentinels, the vines, quickly coiled themselves around the blue wolfkin's body as well, strangling him completely as all he could do was struggle. For some reason, even these tree sentinels were too strong to the point that even a saint like him couldn't free himself using sheer physical strength. I'm sorry. Please let me go. I will never come in your way. Please spare me. He quickly started pleading for mercy as if it was his second nature whenever he got into trouble. TCH, that is such a beta mindset. At least accept your defeat and die with dignity. Would you? Spoke Armin in an unimpressed tone. Compared to Folka, who ran out of most of his mana and world energy reserves, and could no longer fight at his peak because of the constant onslaught from Armin's army that attacked the archer from both ground and sky while surrounding him from every direction, Armin didn't even break a sweat, and his expression was full of vigor and elation despite spending a great amount of his own mana, world energy, and life force to create this army that could even face 10,000 opponents easily. Because Nirvana armor and Hermes staff were passively generating and replenishing all of his power sources without him even having to do anything. Thousands of Trey ants and tree sentinels cleared the way as Armin flew towards the now entrapped Folka, who had a sullen and terrified expression. His body was riddled with wounds, and the wounds caused by the thorns were making him bleed excessively. Little did he know that his vitality was being sucked by these thorns and vines, making him anemic and weaker with every passing moment. Any last wish? Asked Armin as he floated in front of the first stage Saint Archer. Please let me go. I will do anything you tell me. Spoke Folka in a pleading tone, no longer having any sense of superiority against the healer. Denied, replied Armin and placed his right palm on Folka's forehead. Arger! New! Shouted Folka in agony and struggled to break out of the vines relentlessly, his body trembling and shaking haphazardly like a fish out of water, because at this moment, Armin was absorbing in Folka's entire life force. Soon, the ripped body of the wolfkin started becoming thin, as if he was losing all the blood and muscles present inside. Within a minute, his body started shrinking and hardening, as if not a single drop of blood and water was left in his entire being. Crack, crack. Folka's skin and bones cracked as he finally lost his life with horrified eyes, while Armin drained his life force with a smug smile on his face, turning the former into a dried husk. Before the battle started, Folka wanted to be in command of his fate for once and didn't want to be a side character in his own story anymore. He wanted to survive regardless of the cost, and thus planned to take Vanessa hostage and use her as a bargaining chip no matter which side this war shifted on. However, this harmless healer from the enemy team turned out to be a world calamity himself who could create an army using just plants and trees on the battlefield. Folka died with regret in his heart because, in the end, he still died as a background character. After draining out life force from Folka, Armin let go of the body as it fell towards the ground. This last move of his had a part to play soon, thus he chose to give the Saint Archer a terrifying death. Thud! Folka's withered body dropped on the ground, but his killer paid no attention. Instead, Armin had different things to do. Swoosh! Swoosh! Thousands of small green orbs burst out from Armin's body as he released the life force he had absorbed from his enemy's body. Crack! Crack! Crackling noises filled the gigantic tree sentinels. Treats and flying wood elemental creatures that he previously created returned to the ground and started to disassemble themselves through the assistance of Armin's aura. Now all the trees, vines, and leaves were broken, twisted and shattered, mostly after they grounded themselves in the soil. But as soon as these thousands of small green orbs filled with life force were absorbed by the flora and fauna of the battlefield, they started healing on their own as if they were being rejuvenated. In just 10 minutes, the entire forest was back to its former state, as if there was never a battle in the first place. Even Vanessa, who watched Armin perform this miracle, was left speechless. Because what he did just now wasn't possible even for the best healers and druids in the entire Vulcan Empire, no matter how high ranked they were. Armin just brought 15 kilometers of the forested region back to life, even more vigorous and denser than before. And all she could do was watch in amazement. Other members of Khan's group were at a far distance, but due to the span of their respective battlefields, Vanessa sensed that none of them were normal, just like Armin before her. Their background isn't simple. Could they be an elite force of some empire that tried to infiltrate into our lands? Even she was forced to question herself because what she saw didn't make sense in the slightest. Bang! Crackle! Thunderclap! Vanessa quickly looked towards her left and noticed an inconceivable scene that she didn't expect to see here at all. Seriously, who the hell are you people? Shouted the princess as she saw a half-hawk and half-man at the center of the storm, full of wind, elemental attacks, and lightning. And the source of this mayhem was an archer who seemed to have created an entire battlefield of his own. The one causing this chaos was none other than Oliver. 18 kilometers away from Armin's location was a battlefield full of typhoons and lightning strikes. There was nothing but utter destruction, and not a single portion of the landscape was left untouched. Trees, grass and roots were uprooted by the terrifyingly strong winds, while the ground caught fire because of the lightning bolts striking the ground from time to time in the 5-kilometer radius. At this moment, Oliver now faced a black snakekin tank warrior with a large red shield and a giant mace in his hand as he faced again this hawkman archer with a dark brown body and wings. Following are the statistics for General Oliver. Name: Oliver. Species: Thunderbird. Variant: Garuda. Job: Tempest Archer. Legendary class. Rank: Legendary rank. Level: 289. Strength: 12,791. Agility: 18,220. Dexterity: 15,738. Defense: 7,902. Mana: 10,482. Following are the skills and abilities. Stormbringer, SSS rank. Caladrius Wings, SSS rank. Soul Distortion, Saint rank. Sky Emperor, Saint rank. Jetstream, SSS rank. Thunderbird Wings, SSS rank. Horus Eye, SSS rank. Guardian of the Squadron, SSS rank. Aerostorm, SSS rank. Descent of the Sun, SSS rank. Bloodline, Godbeast Rock. Bloodline Purity, 37%. Reported the system after Oliver asked for the details, just like the rest. To the onlookers, this battle would look no different than a face-off between an eagle and a snake. Oliver summoned his new set and quickly mixed his variant bloodline that the potential to surpass even the Godbeast Rock in the future. The sky blue armor with green hue transformed and quickly turned into a combination of blue, golden, and brown-colored armor set. And now, Oliver no longer looked like a barbarian hawkman with a bare chest and large wings, but a properly geared archer. Because of his bloodline merged with the armor, Oliver's figure grew from 3 meters to 5 meters tall, and so did his entire gear and wings that automatically expanded themselves to fit his new appearance. Even his talons and wings now possessed an aura of supremacy, as if an overlord of the sky was looking down on all earthly creatures. Effects, said Oliver without wasting another moment. Following are the effects of the Shoe armor set. Shoot for the sky. General Oliver can now create an invisible sky domain which will have the wind pressure, formation of clouds, and condensation of lightning fully under the user's control. Any enemy under the sky domain will have their agility and dexterity reduced by 30%. Don't fly too close to the sun. The flight capacity of the enemies will be reduced by 40%, and they will feel a suppression that will restrict their physical movements while trying to ascend higher than General Oliver. This suppression will apply to any enemy regardless of their rank and levels, whether they're higher or lower ranked than the general. Pa-N-O, note. Sky Emperor, Thunderbird Wings, Stormbringer, and Soul Distortion can be used now without General Oliver having to transform into his true form. Reported the system. Ha ha ha. Good. This means inside the sky domain, I'm basically in control of the entire battlefield. Once my levels and rank increase, so will my range and effectiveness. This new armor is indeed incredible for the long-term use." He spoke in elation, because compared to other members of their crew, Oliver lacked proper gear the most. And now, with the help of Shu armor set, he was basically the endgame boss who couldn't even be reached no matter how high you tried to fly in order to catch him. Oliver then looked at his opponent, who was getting tired out because of the continuous attacks from hundreds of wind elemental arrows and blades made of highly compressed air. "Whatever you do, wherever you go," said Oliver in a grim tone, as if a hunter was looking at its defenseless prey. His eyes locked with that of the snakekin as he spoke in a domineering voice that sent shivers in his opponent's spine. "I'll be watching you." After learning the effects of Shu armor from the system, Oliver gave a cynical glance at the snakekin opponent, who was surrounded by a maelstrom of strong winds and lightning bolts striking furiously and destroying the entire battlefield they were fighting inside this 5-kilometer-wide storm. As soon as Oliver declared that he would hunt him down like a predator, the black snakekin's expression turned grim because the aura Oliver exuded and the change in his appearance gave him the hint that the archer opponent of his had either used some kind of bloodline ability or received a huge buff in strength. "Damn it! Now he looks as if he received some kind of boost. Why is my luck so bad?" complained the snakekin. Garak was a first-stage saint with exceptional abilities when it came to his class. One of the main reasons why he won the spot to enter the heroes' party. He and Tamek were the guys who fought at the front line with the support of other team members whenever they fought. But after being separated from his allies and seeing them getting killed one by one, Garak was frightened to his core for the first time in the past 5 years. Oliver then infused his bloodline with his new legendary rank bow that Khan named as Neith. A white and golden bow that had multiple intricate and intrinsically carved patterns as well as on and within the body of the bow itself was revealed. The aura this bow emitted was that of perfection and serenity, as if symbolizing the characteristics of nature itself. Following are the effects of Neith bow. There is no escape. Allows General Oliver to mark an enemy, and all the arrows launched from the bow will automatically redirect themselves towards the target regardless of the direction arrows have been shot in. Predator's Mark. Increases critical hit chance and critical damage by 200% and 400% respectively. This damage will be dependent on the strength stats of the general. The higher leveled and ranked the user is, the more damage will be dealt based on the stats of the general. Note: General Oliver's gift given by the Sky Deity, Indra called as the Vajra attack skill, can now be used with the help of legendary rank Neith bow without having to transform into the Thunderbird form. Reported the system. Good. Another long-term use weapon. Now I no longer have to look for good gear anymore. Spoke Oliver in his content voice. Now that both Shu armor and Neith bow gave him a way to use his powerful abilities and attack skills that were accessible only in his true form, as well as a lot of benefits and battle-related buffs respectively, Oliver was now fully ready to go all out. The whole tornado and lightning strikes, they were just small gimmicks of his bloodline. The real battle would start from this moment. Swoom. Swoom. Soon, waves after waves of golden and blue aura were emitted out of Oliver's body like ripples caused by a drop of water in a stagnant pond. These ripples soon dispersed into the nearby 5 kilometers of radius in a dozen seconds. Rumble. Rumble. Crackle. Crackle. Hundreds of lightning bolts dropped like arrows from the sky as the dark clouds suddenly appeared and covered their entire battlefield like a dome. Visible volleys of wind blades started appearing and completely surrounded the entire battlefield. Neither could one enter nor could anyone leave. What the hell is happening? Wondered the 2.5-meter snakekin tank warrior with a flabbergasted expression as he sensed a great deal of suppression on his body. His body and movement already felt sluggish for some reason, and he was having a hard time breathing at the same time. Little did he know, this was Oliver's new personal domain, aka the Sky Domain. And under the don't fly too close to the sun effect of Shu armor, his flight capacity was reduced by 40%. And because of the Sky Domain effect, his agility and dexterity were already suppressed by 30%. Before, maybe the Snakekin had the chance to retaliate or fight as equals with Oliver. However, the situation was no longer favorable for him. Boom! Bang! Rumble. Thunderous noises filled the 5 kilometers radius under the impenetrable barrier of the sky domain, and Garak was completely surrounded by Oliver's lightning bolts and wind blades, afraid to make a move because there was no guarantee that he won't be lethally wounded by a fatal attack from some random direction. What the hell is this? How can an archer use skills like this? He questioned with an ashen expression. Even someone like Rodden, who was a wind elemental mage, couldn't create storms of this degree. And on top of it, not only this archer could use plenty of skills, he could use 2 elements mixed in his attacks. This was something even the second stage Saint Archer like Michaela from their group couldn't do. Garak was an earth elemental tank. But now, his opponent has the 2 elements infused in his skills that were his bane as a tank warrior. An unstoppable force meets an immovable object. It was what he thought at the beginning of their battle. But in reality, it was a goddamn mountain against a thin sheet of paper. Crackle. Crackle. A sense of impending destruction could be felt on the battlefield, and without wasting another moment, Garak quickly activated all of his defensive skills, and 4 different layers of protective barriers activated and encapsulated his entire body. Swoosh. Swoosh. Impossible. How's that even possible? He shouted and looked at the Emerald Archer class enemy. Will of the heavens, grant me thy strength. Lend me your wrath to punish my foes. Spoke Oliver, his tyrannical voice resounding in the entire battlefield. Soon, a 100-meter-tall phantom bow appeared in the sky. This massive bow was exactly identical to the Neath bow that was being held by Oliver at this moment. Boom! More than 100 lightning bolts thundered in the battlefield, their ear-deafening noise and bright light blinding Garak, making him quickly hide behind his massive red shield. Soon, these summoned lightning bolts intermingled with each other and became a single entity. Damn it! Heroes and empires! I want to escape this battle, Garak said in a shrill voice, because right now, Oliver's phantom bow had a 50-meter-long massive lightning bolt knocked and aimed at him. Heaven's judgment, spoke Oliver as he launched his biggest killer move. Vajra! Boom! A massive burst of white and blue light quickly turned the entire 5-kilometer region into a dome of lightning as an enormous explosion shattered the 2 kilometers region instantly. The ripples and aftershocks from the explosion finally dispersed after 5 minutes, and only a 500-meter wide and 100-meter deep hole and hundreds of cracks and crevices had filled the surrounding area after Oliver used his biggest trump card while restricting the opponent's movements. And at the very center of this deep pit was a charred body that was destroyed in 4 different parts. Like shooting at a rabbit stuck in a hole with a goddamn bazooka, Oliver did something none of the other generals managed to do so far. He killed his opponent in a single shot. After Oliver made an overkill strike, straight up nuking his enemy and killing the first stage Saint Tank Snakekin with a single shot, the 6th member of the hero's party fell in battle. Now, only 2 of them remained, but unlike the others, both of these individuals were the strongest members of the entire party. Each one was a rank higher than their respective opponents. While Khan faced Axel in the middle of the battlefield, there was an intense battle happening at the western end of this 50 kilometers wide isolation barrier where the entire battlefield was crumbled and scattered. Clang! Clang! A 2-meter-tall Fireborn's black trident clashed against a curved blade held by a swordsman. Sparks flew in the air as their weapons clashed against each other from time to time. Damn it! Garak also died. This leaves only me and the hero of fire. Who the hell are these people and why are they so strong? Cursed Azarog, the trident user Fireborn, who was also a 4th stage saint. Based on his rank and levels, his attack range was 20 kilometers at minimum, and his senses were heightened to the point he could sense everything within the 40 kilometers radius if he used all his skills. Thus, he was completely aware of what was happening on all the battlefields. First, it was Tamek, the 2nd stage Berserker Saint, one of the strongest fighters of the group, was mercilessly killed by a human saint who suddenly transformed and grew 2 red horns on his head. To his memory, this human was only a 1st stage saint with the Berserker class as well, but still managed to completely overwhelm a veteran warrior like Tamek. Second, it was Rodden. He was a wind elemental mage with a plethora of skills and an expert in long-range attacks while having the ability to escape easily if there came a need. Yet, he was killed by an Earth elemental tank who had the disadvantage in terms of elemental attribute, range of abilities, and offensive skills. The Dark Elf Mage was trapped like a bird in a cage by his opponent using the sand and stones of the battlefield and had his head bashed by the enemy's shield, dying a horrifying death. Third, it was Michaela, a second-stage archer who was an expert of the group in long-range and rapid attack skills and probably had the most agility and dexterity if he excluded himself and Hero of Fire based on her species and class. Not only was her opponent an assassin who lacked long-range attacks, but he was also completely exposed, losing the advantage of hiding and making a sneak attack to kill off the enemy. On top of it, he was only a first-stage Saint assassin at that. The obvious result should have been Michaela poking 100 holes in his body, but instead, her opponent killed her by stabbing his daggers through her head and heart, giving her a swift and helpless death in the end. Fourth, it was Edna, the second-stage succubus enchantress, who was also the best support member of the entire party and had mastered 5 elements along with the study of extremely powerful magic formations. However, her fate was worse than the first 4 people's. Somehow, a mage who could use the forbidden dark magic turned out to be her opponent. Not only this mage could use the dark magic spells and cast barriers, he could somehow absorb Edna's attacks and replenish his own world energy and mana reserves. And finally, he summoned a massive black book in chains, instantly increasing his strength that even dwarfed that of Edna. In the end, those chains plunged themselves into Edna's worn-out body and tore her into 7 pieces. The once beautiful and entrancing succubus, who had millions of admirers throughout the Vulcan Empire, was ripped apart and died a brutal death. Fifth, it was Folka. Although Azarog found him weak and someone with a cowardly mentality, he had not expected him to die at the hands of a healer. But this healer was an oddity who could make wood elemental creatures from plant life, making Folka lose his advantage in range and defense after how he was surrounded by thousands of enemies from both ground and the sky. Azarog noticed how Folka had his life force drained out of his body, something he never saw a healer capable of doing before. Sixth, it was Garak. Azarog had a good impression of the Snakekin because he was not only strong but had plenty of defensive skills along with great experience. In the past 5 years, Garak had proven his worth many times already. Yet, the main tank of their party died a death that wasn't even worth pitying. Although Azarog couldn't sense what was happening inside the battlefield created by Oliver that was filled with typhoons, wind blades, and lightning bolts, he could feel the power of the massive 50 meters long lightning bolt this archer summoned. In front of his killer shot, their strong and dependable tank died instantly despite using all of his skills and protection barrier. That, in itself, was a testament to how strong this killer move was. The 4th stage Saint now came to realize that although his party members were strong in a group battle, they were weak individually after being separated by these saints from the enemy side. Azarog himself wanted to charge in and help them. However, this opponent of his, who appeared to be a 3rd stage Saint, instantly blocked his way, stopping him from helping any of his teammates. Why do I feel like none of them are normal? Their abilities and skills can't be explained by normal reasoning. And their bloodlines and auras are completely strange as well. It's as if they're not saints but some kind of monsters, thought Azarog. And on top of it, why the hell is this bastard so strong and fast despite me being a rank higher than him? I'm supposed to be 5 times stronger than him, but he's equally matching me in every aspect. Wondered the opponent as he looked at his enemy who appeared a kilometer away after their recent exchange. Azarog gave an incredulous look to his enemy, whose most of the upper body full of abs and ripped muscles was exposed. A man with waist-length silver hair, having eyes that had red iris in them, while the right arm of his was pitch black, resembling that of some kind of demonic creature. He wore only gauntlets and white straps on his arms and loose pants that didn't hinder his movements in the slightest. "Let's have a duel." Just then, his opponent aka Omega challenged him with a smile on his face. Boom! An oppressive aura filled the battlefield after he took out the 2nd katana that Throck forged for him. Omega was now dual-wielding his katanas for the first time in a battle, and his voice reverberated in the surroundings as he continued his words. To the death. Azarog now faced a human hybrid enemy, whom he had met once in front of the main building of the Oakenshield Weapon Forging Company. And now, He was facing this very saint who was a rank lower than him but matched him in terms of strength and speed. Throughout their clash, Omega was using Raijin, the blade made by Albestros using the Invimirax tusk, which was later upgraded to legendary rank katana by Throck, who reforged it. But now that only Azarog remained among the heroes' party, Omega decided it was time to put the nail in the coffin. Boom! A domineering, tyrannical, and dreadful aura instantly spread across 1 kilometer radius and instantly put Azarog on alert mode as soon as he saw the source of this insurmountable and oppressive pressure. For the first time since their exchange of moves started, Omega decided to use his new katana forged by Throck, which Khan had named as Kojin. Give me details, commanded Omega as he wanted to prepare a proper battle tactic before he seriously started battling Azarog. Following are the statistics of the first subordinate Omega. Name Omega. Species Hrodvitner, variant Fenrir. Job Dual Swords Samurai. Legendary rank. Rank Mythical rank. Level 420. Strength 43,920. Agility 39,118. Dexterity 38,910. Defense 34,720. Mana 29,183. Effects of the legendary rank Job Dual Swords Samurai. Dual Swords Samurai, legendary rank. Passive. While using dual katana wield during a battle, the subordinate will have a 200% increase in agility and strength attributes. With each passing hour during a battle, the subordinate shall receive an additional 50% effectiveness increase in all physical and magical attacks and skills. Following are the abilities and skills. Gravity Domain, legendary rank. Gravitational Upforce, Saint rank. Gravitational Downforce, Saint rank. Attraction, Saint rank. Repulsion, Saint rank. Gravity Imprisonment, Saint rank. Sword King, SSS rank. Sword Battlemaster, SSS rank. Bloodline Boost, SSS rank.
Bloodlust, sis rank.
Fenrir's Howl, SSS rank. Wolf Sovereign, SSS rank. Devourer, legendary rank. Quick Draw, SSS rank. Sword Will, Saint rank. Mirage Blades, Saint rank. Elemental Domain, SSS rank. Bloodline, Godbeast Fenrir. Current bloodline purity, 75%, reported the system. Good. Now that I'm using both katanas, I can overcome the difference between our strength with the doubled speed and strength. He spoke inwardly and looked at Kojin after he infused his bloodline. A pitch-black curved blade made from the guardian dragon's horn that had multiple small red vein patterns. But on the edge of the katana, the entirety of it glowed scarlet red as soon as Omega took it out. He gazed at Azarog, who had prepared for a serious battle after Omega challenged him to a duel to the death. He's still a rank higher than me. Plus, my temporary strength boost abilities won't work for long. I guess I have no choice but to use Kojin in that form. Spoke Omega, and the very next moment, boom! A massive red pillar of scarlet red fire rose and instantly shattered the nearby ground below just from the aftershocks and impact of the explosion. When the pillar of fire finally subsided, Azarog had his mouth agape in surprise as he saw a completely new look of his enemy. Omega's entire body was covered in black and red flames, and so was Kojin. Unlike before when they exchanged moves, there was a hint of chaotic aura filled with bloodlust emitting from Omega, and the surrounding was suddenly filled with an oppressive force that made Azarog feel like he was drowning inside a sea of blood. And finally, Omega donned in black and red armor, silver hair, and a black mask with white fangs on it was revealed to him. On his left shoulder was the head of a black wolf, while the other one was covered in black fur. Kojin and Raijin retained the same appearance, but the edge of the former was on fire. Omega's left arm and leg were on scarlet red fire around the corners, while Kojin itself emitted intense flames as the entire blade itself looked hot as magma. In contrast to Azarog's appearance, who was also donning black and red armor, Omega's form looked domineering and terrifying even though he was a meter shorter than the fire-born saint. Omega was finally using his second battle mode, also called the Twilight Armor form. In this form that he got after merging with the mythical rank wolf monsters aka Skull and Hattie in the Forbidden Zone during their hunt for the Tablet of Arcana, Omega acquired two battle forms after the two descendants of the god-beast Fenrir gave him their wills as a form of imparting knowledge to a junior. Compared to Omega's normal form and Moonlight Armor form, he was slower, but his strength stats rose by 4 times and the total damage output and effectiveness of all of his skills and abilities were doubled at the expense of sacrificing speed and dexterity. However, with the help of Dual Swords Samurai Legendary class effects, he overcame that demerit and now he was back to his normal speed like his usual human form. In simple words, Omega was 4 times stronger compared to when he faced Azarog since their face-off started. And this power boost would remain active as long as he was using the Twilight Armor form. Omega then grabbed Kojin with both hands. A black and red fire suddenly appeared around the blade of the katana and soon, an incomprehensible majestic aura that signified supremacy resonated within the 10 kilometers radius. Even Khan and Axel, who were having a bout of their own, as well as all the generals, turned around to look in Omega's direction after sensing this terrifying aura. Impossible! How can he use that fire? Spoke Azarog, showing an aghast and terrified expression despite being a higher-ranked saint than Omega. There were 5 kinds of fires in Vantria that were superior to the ones used by the fireborn species. And among them was the one kind that everyone regardless of their species feared the most. And Omega's katana was revealing that very powerful and destructive force that was second to none. Also known as the Dragon Fire. Under everyone's surprised gazes, Omega finally revealed his new trump card that even made Azarog, who was a fire elemental warrior himself, feel dread and fear for the first time since they started their clash. There are 5 strongest types of fires in the world. 5th is the fire used by fire elemental titans, which are extremely rare. 4th is the fire that the fireborn species can use as part of our innate talent if one also masters the element. 3rd is Hellfire, which only the royalty among the true demon species can use. 2nd is fire used by the imperial clan of the Vulcan Empire, since they're the direct descendants of a primordial creature of fire. And the 1st, which is unrivaled in the whole world regardless of their rank or species, is the Dragonfire. Thought Azarog. He himself had studied and mastered the fire element after spending 2 decades of his life. So he knew very well how to differentiate them or which one was more powerful and potent. In this field, Dragonfire stood at the top and had been unrivaled from millions of years in their world. And even among the dragons, only the lesser dragon and above could use the authentic Dragonfire, while others such as wyverns, WYRMS and drakes could only have it as their physical element, and that too in a very minute quantity. Yet somehow, the opponent in front of him was using rare Dragonfire that even their fire empire didn't have access to. No, it's not him. That armor is misleading me. It's that damn sword, spoke Azarog as he noticed the source being none other than Kojin, unlike those without experience mistakenly thinking that it was because of the Twilight Armor form taken by Omega that made him look like a walking volcano. So that's what the sword does, exclaimed Jugram. He too was a master in the fire element. But he was adept at using Hellfire because of his true demon bloodline. Aha! No wonder he didn't reveal it back then. Could have killed us if he used it inside the forge that day, said Cyril in their telepathic chat group. Kojin is able to use Dragonfire since Master Throck used a dragon's heart while forging it. It allows Omega to use normal fire aura, since he is a magic swordsman and can use 5 different elements. Based on need, his normal fire element gets converted into Dragonfire after it passes through Kojin's blade. Explained Blackwell, as the two was a legit blacksmith at this point. Just that he hadn't gathered enough experience to break through to Saint Blacksmith rank yet. Unlike Khan, he didn't have doppelgangers or a way to raise his experience to make it happen in a short time. But his knowledge and experience were enough to let him get a hint of the functionality of the katana forged by Throck. Other generals nodded in agreement, feeling no need to intervene in Omega's battle. Heaven's subjugation. Just then, Omega spoke loudly and quickly swung his katana in a vertical slash. Holy flames of Hetrax! What the hell? Thought Azarog and tried to fly away with all his might. Black Fang strike. Bang. Rumble. Crack. Shatter. A massive slash attack of dragonfire incinerated everything that came in its way. The sky rumbled and the ground shattered as 2 kilometers of the battlefield was split apart instantly, and a 400-meter-wide crevice was revealed associated with the burning and pulverized ground. The clouds were already parted into 2 just from the aftershocks, and the nearby 10 kilometers of space shook as if there was an earthquake. Swoosh! That was close. How is he able to use dragonfire to this extent? What kind of freak am I fighting? Questioned the Fireborn, who just nearly escaped death. The attack skill performed by Omega just now made a 5 kilometers long crevice, raising everything that came across its way to nothing but dust. And the intense scarlet-red fire was burning everything it touched on the ground and even melting stone boulders with no exceptions. However, Azarog had no idea that Black Fang Strike was a skill Omega could use only when he was using the Twilight Armor. This strike was imbued with his gravity law skills and made the attack more terrifying. With the dragonfire at his beck and call, Omega infused it with the attack move, making it even more terrifying than it originally was. He was also agility and strength-based warrior just like Omega, so he understood the power delivered through that attack. Even Azarog now felt like his own fire attacks were not potent or strong enough as the strike, and if he hadn't made it in time, not even his ashes would have remained. Should I convince him to retreat? Our allies are already dead, and this guy in front of me is no weaker than me either. The enemy side has 6 more saints along with the princess. That's 9 against 2 of us. Also, the Pope still hasn't informed or sent a confirmation about killing the Emperor. There are too many factors going against us at this point. Analyzed Azarog in just a second. He weighed the pros and cons in his mind and finally decided to make his own move. No matter how I look at this battle is already lost. He thought and quickly dashed towards Axel's position. Swoosh! But before he even escaped 5 kilometers, Omega suddenly appeared in front of Azarog just a few hundred meters away in the sky. If you want to get close to my master or the hero of fire, you'll have to walk over my dead body, declared Omega from under his black wolf-faced mask. Get out of my way. I can end this battle and convince him to leave the princess alone. Do you really want to force the hero of fire to use his divine abilities? Even I won't be able to survive them. There is no reward in such a Pyrrhic victory. Spoke Azarog with a grim expression. He doesn't seem to care, and neither does my master. So as their right-hand men, we should settle our score first. Shing! Shrill! Before Azarog could react, an intangible force erupted from Omega's body and quickly, a cascading and translucent barrier formed and separated 15 kilometers of radius, matching the appearance identical to that of patterns on a diamond. The winner shall get to see the end of it all, spoke Omega in a domineering voice, because at this moment he was finally using his biggest trump card. And that was the gravity domain. After Omega obstructed Azarog from leaving their duel and regrouping with Axel, the dual-sword samurai quickly used gravity domain skill, separating 15 kilometers of space in matter of seconds and taking away the last chance to retreat. Impossible! How the hell does he have a domain? He's not even a 5th stage saint yet, exclaimed Azarog in shock. This was going against everything he knew about being a saint so far. First, Omega could use dragonfire using a katana, and now he cast a domain of his own without even meeting the prerequisite condition of being a 5th stage saint. This was completely unheard of, and even their empire's imperial family couldn't accomplish such a feat. Gravity domain, legendary rank, active. Subordinate Omega can create and control a gravitational field within a 15 kilometers radius based on his current levels and rank, allowing the subordinate to move faster, be more agile, conserve stamina, or fly, all by decreasing the effects of gravity on himself. Excluding the host and fellow subordinates, all the other beings from the opposition shall have their defense reduced by 40% and agility reduced by 90% inside the gravity domain. Replied the system as it gave Omega the updated stats. Previously, when Omega turned into a mythical rank creature, gravity domain had 10-kilometer radius of effectiveness. But now that his levels rose and he was comparable to a 3rd stage saint rank being, the range increased by 5 kilometers. This was more than enough for him to face down a 4th stage saint like Azarog in front of him. "Don't waste my time, let's fight!" he shouted and charged at Azarog. Clang! Both Kojin and Raijin clashed against Azarog's black trident, and the Fireborn was flung 400 meters away. "What the hell is happening? Why can't I move at my top speed?" he asked himself with a stifled expression. "This is my domain. There's no escape unless you kill me with your strength," declared Omega as he looked at the Fireborn with disdain. "Damn it! So that's his domain's effect. I have no other choice but to fight now." He spoke inwardly and decided to go all out. He could feel that although his speed was not even 10% of his original capacity, his strength and dexterity were left untouched by Omega's domain. "Fine then, bring it on!" shouted Azarog and released his full saint pressure. Boom! Omega came out of a massive explosion that put him in a disheveled state after he faced the attack from the 4th stage saint head-on. Despite having the suppression on his movements due to the gravity domain, Azarog's attacks were enough to obliterate everything within a 20 kilometers radius. His rank as a 4th stage saint wasn't just for show. Only now did Omega understand that Azarog wasn't trying to avoid a battle because he was afraid, but rather, he had different priorities until he was forced by Omega to fight. Even with his speed, there were very few openings in the Fireborn's defense and not a single hit landed on the enemy. This made Omega become certain that the opponent was an extremely skilled and talented warrior. Huff! Huff! Azarog panted as sweat appeared on his forehead. Only he knew how much world energy he was expending in those massive fire-slash attacks that vaporized 5 to 10 kilometers of the battlefield. If not for his speed under restriction, he would already have killed Omega. Even the Hrodvitner subordinate was aware of this fact. Although he wouldn't have died because of the defense provided by Twilight armor, he would certainly receive lethal injuries. Even now, Azarog was still at least 20% stronger than him, so Omega was looking for a proper chance to land a killing blow. "I guess I have to reveal my hand then. I was saving that in case I had to use it in front of Hero of Fire. But I need to finish this guy first," he thought. "Eyes on me." A thunderous battle cry filled the surroundings as Azarog's aura condensed and 5 massive 100-meter-long tridents made of pure and intense fire. Swoosh! 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 The 5 massive tridents launched themselves at Omega in succession and quickly covered the distance of 5 kilometers in just 10 seconds. Omega didn't even bother evading because he knew these tridents were locked on him like a homing missile. However, instead of running away, Omega extended his open palm towards the approaching tridents. Shing! As soon as the tridents came 1 kilometer close to him, they stopped midair instantly, unable to move an inch closer, like stopping bullets in the air before they hit him. The next moment, his left palm moved and the tridents changed their directions to his left side, making them travel afar from the intended target. Bang! Another loud noise resounded as the 5 tridents obliterated everything in the 10-kilometer radius after they landed on an open field. "Impossible! Is that the gravity law?" spoke Azarog in a bewildered tone. "Damn it! I need to kill this bastard quickly," he shouted and then launched a barrage of oversized and destructive attacks one after another. Omega then started using attraction, repulsion, gravity upforce and gravity downforce skills to divert all the attacks. He pulled Azarog closer and farther when needed to avoid the attacks. And sometimes when Azarog was creating a killer move, Omega forced his body to move up and down, ruining his battle skills and techniques as a result. These were the exact skills Skull Vahadi used when the generals fought against them. Although Omega was not on their level of mastery and needed to learn and perfect these skills to a greater extent, it was more than enough for this battle as they came in handy. Whenever Omega used Skull's skills, his eye color changed to blue, and when he used Hattie's skills, they turned crimson-red contrary to his original blood-red eyes. Finally, after Azarog ended up using all of his skills and world energy just to escape Omega's gravity domain, he was no longer in control. Omega quickly used the Bloodlust skill on Azarog to put him under stun debuff, and before the Fireborn could break free, Omega used his second most powerful and ace in the hole. Azarog's entire body stopped moving, his mind going haywire because he couldn't make sense of anything that was happening. Unbeknownst to him, Omega was using the most decisive skill that could change the direction of battle. And that was gravity imprisonment. Finally, Omega used his second most useful and powerful move that he had under his holster. The first was obviously the gravity domain, and the second being none other than gravity imprisonment skill. This was a skill that allowed the Hrodvitner subordinate to focus and concentrate the entirety of his gravity domain on a single spot and completely freeze that target, unable to even move an inch of their body or even bat an eye. This skill could be used on any target within 15 kilometers based on the dual-sword samurai subordinate's current power levels. But there was a reason why Omega hadn't used it throughout the battle. Because this skill had one big flaw. And that flaw would be the undoing of this skill and would jeopardize Omega's life if failed. The biggest flaw of this skill was that if the opponent had some type of burst of energy type of skills that could explode and throw off the exerted gravitational force on their body, not only the skill will get nulled but Omega's entire gravity domain, which was the main driving force behind this skill, would instantly crumble. And as a result, Omega would receive a severe backslash that could incapacitate him as a consequence. Thus, he carefully used his other skills and used the gravity domain suppression on Azarog till the Fireborn depleted all of his strength and could no longer use any last-moment life-saving skill. And finally, it was time to seal the deal. The very next moment, a white armor suddenly appeared out of nowhere and Omega was completely covered under it, as if this armor was part of his body. His black arm remained the same and his right leg part of the army also turned black, but this time, there was blue fire coming out of the corners. Along with these two noticeable changes, some parts of the armor also turned black. Around his right shoulder was the head of a white wolf while the left shoulder was covered in fur. Even Omega's eyes turned bright blue in this transformation. His eyes turned bright blue, and as for the head, it was covered in a white mask that completely hid his face. This was the Moonlight armor form Omega inherited from Skull. This was the battle form where Omega was 4 times faster and his accuracy and maneuverability increased by twice. Azarog's entire being shuddered with fear and disbelief. Omega quickly took an attacking stance as his back slightly hunched along with his legs while he placed his right hand on Kojin, which was sheathed at the moment. Quick draw. In the next second, Omega appeared 2 kilometers behind the frozen and restrained figure of Azarog, the 4th stage saint. Shatter. With this, Omega's gravity domain instantly shattered and the restrictions on his body were removed. Azarog turned his head around and looked at Omega, wondering what just happened. But then he noticed that Omega no longer had Kojin in his right hand while Raijin was still sheathed in the scabbard. Shock! An instant wave of shock hit his body and mind as Azarog finally noticed what happened in that microsecond. The Fireborn Saint turned his head back and looked down as he finally noticed where the missing Kojin was. Splurt! Azarog had a fear-stricken and bewildered expression. Not Omega was equally matched in strength but could use gravity law. And under his domain, when he was stunned for just 1 second and due to his agility was restricted by 90%, he couldn't even escape the killing strike that came his way. Because at this moment, Kojin was stabbed right inside his chest. I will give you one last chance. Would you die as a coward or? Spoke Omega in a domineering voice and continued in a tyrannical voice. Die with honor. Azarog's body slowly descended to the ground as the wound started spewing blood from the place of the wound. Yet the saint didn't try to take it out or used any potions to protect his life. Because he heard Omega's words. The enemy was giving him a last chance to die with honor instead of a merciless execution. If the latter tried to make a move, Kojin would activate and he'd die an agonizing death because of the dragon fire. And he no longer had any means to protect himself or retaliate in the slightest at this point. Azarog could feel the life force leaving his body and soon, he'd die. But instead of having an indignant expression in his final moments, he had a tranquil expression and tears dropped from his eyes. With each passing moment, the 4th stage saint started recounting his journey in the past 5 years ever since he joined the hero's party. and how he turned from a person with morals and ethics of a prideful warrior into a scum who kidnapped women and brought them to Axel under the order of his clan and the Church of Hetrax. Those deeds were something he was ashamed of till this moment, but throughout all this time, he told himself that it was for the sake of the Empire, to help the Church reign and then bring a unified peace after they threw away the imperial rule. Maybe this is the punishment for my crimes. I have failed my clan, my empire, and I have discarded my honor as a warrior. A heinous criminal like me doesn't even deserve this type of kind death. He spoke to himself as he revealed an expression of agony and regret on his countenance. Not everyone was inherently bad. Sometimes they were forced to do things that didn't go along with their character because of their lineage and background. Not every rich heir of a noble clan like Azarog was a vile and cruel individual, and not all weak and poor people were righteous or good. Unlike the stories of heroism, bravery, chivalry, and justice, the world wasn't black or white. Rather, it had always been gray. Azarog was an example of such people. A good man standing on the side of evil. He was a talented prodigy and an honorable warrior, comparable to a valorous and loyal knight of a king. But his very background and identity forced him to serve a master who was no different than a living monster. As his consciousness was getting affected because of the blood loss, he looked at Axel, who didn't even bother trying to rescue him or any of the fallen party members until now. May you rot in the eternal hell, you bastard. For every crime you made me commit and every woman and their families' lives you destroyed, I hope the gods above give divine punishment. I will pay for my crimes if there's an afterlife. But as for you, I hope your death is much worse than anyone can ever imagine. Spoke Azarog as he came to terms with his death. All those thoughts took only 10 seconds in real time. Azarog then sat down on his knees. Omega appeared behind him on his left, raising Raijin high. "Do it!" shouted the fire-born saint with determined eyes. Slash! A cleanly cut head dropped on the ground that had a look of containment and acceptance, as if thanking this killer for granting him a swift and painless death. Omega killed Azarog in a traditional samurai execution style called seppuku. With this, he ended the life of a person bound by duty and lineage. A person who was forced to do things while going against their values. Was this person deserving of swift and painless death? Nobody knew. But at least Omega could infer from the expression on Azarog's face that he died with the honor of a warrior. Half an hour ago, Khan suddenly appeared in the middle of the battlefield after he broke the newly cast suppression barrier with his perfected dragon strike, which was twice as effective and perfectly synergies compared to his time in Rocco's empire when he was only a semi-saint. After his allies came out of his shadow and targeted each of the hero's party members under his instructions. The battlefield was split up into 8 parts, Khan and Axel being in the center of it. Khan used the newly upgraded legendary rank Lucifer to face Axel head-on, while the subordinates were tasked with getting rid of the teammates of the Hero of Fire. Khan quickly used Sword Emperor, the Saint rank upgraded version of Sword King skill. After rising in rank because Khan himself became a saint, the skill now allowed him to create 500 aura swords comprised of different elements and world energy together. And now that he used world energy instead of mana to use this skill, each massive 10-meter-long greatsword was twice effective than before. However, because his physiology and stats were already equal to a peak second stage saint thanks to the effects of war deity body, Khan was already a formidable opponent, unlike what one would expect from a first stage saint. Throughout his attacks, he only used the swordsman skills and didn't make any killing moves or revealed his darkness element or dark magic skills either. He could explain his rise in strength later, but he could not afford to reveal his real identity even now. Half an hour later, multiple scenes occurred where the hero's party members were brutally and mercilessly dying at hands of his subordinates. "Lord Axel, save me!" screamed Edna as she pleaded and wailed in agony. But unlike what one would expect, Axel didn't bother retreating and trying to save his allies. Instead, he was focused on fighting Khan while evading his great swords of 5 different elements targeting from all directions. And unlike some foolish and impatient people who would think that the battle was being dragged out unnecessarily, Khan wasn't in a hurry to blindly charge and engage Axel in a battle. All of it was actually a strategic move since the moment he revealed himself as a saint by stepping into the battlefield. Khan was aware of a very crucial thing mentioned in the art of war. Strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory. But tactics without a strategy is just the noise before certain defeat. First, through the battle with Vanessa and Hector, he saw through the abilities of all the members of the hero's party. Later, he isolated them by choosing the best candidates from his team who could kill the members for certain. Because even if he had the same numbers, he hadn't seen Axel using any of his divine abilities. And he certainly had more than Khan. Having a war with equal numbers would be the most stupid way to fight the hero's party. Among the enemy side, the biggest threats here were Axel and Azarog. So he sent Omega to pin down Azarog because only Omega in their group had the strength and the gravity domain and gravity imprisonment skill that could help kill the 4th stage saint. Although Khan too had some of the gravity law skills, his attainment was no different than a poser in this law compared to Omega, who practiced these skills and abilities during his daily training from the past 1.5 years. There was another reason why he himself faced Axel. Because in case Axel used any of his divine abilities that could kill the opponent, only Khan here had the dimensional void ability that could help him escape just with a single thought. And what was his aim? No, it wasn't to kill the hero of fire at all. Rather, to destroy the artifact that controlled this isolation barrier and get Vanessa out of here. He was already clear that the church started a coup and planned to kill the emperor. If Javi survived, good for him. But if he died, then Khan would help Vanessa to gather the imperial clan's forces. If things came to worst and Church was the final victor, he'd at least escape with Vanessa and ensure her safety. She tried to protect him even when her own freedom was in jeopardy. So Khan wasn't going to abandon her in the time of need. That's what he wished to do as her friend. But what surprised Khan the most was that despite watching his team members getting killed by Khan's crew one by one, the hero of fire showed an expression of indifference, as if their lives didn't matter to him at all. And now that Azarog also fell in battle, Axel was all alone and Khan had control of this battle. This was exactly what Khan wished to achieve. By cornering the hero of fire using their sheer numbers and using this opportunity to force Axel to forfeit the artifact, thus being able to leave this place. Khan did not want to stay until some powerful reinforcements of the church arrived. Finally, Khan and all of his subordinates surrounded Axel from all sides, not leaving him a single escape route. As for fighting Axel, why the hell would Khan do that? Making a heroic entrance to save the princess from the clutches of the bad guys worked only in fictional stories. Only an idiot without thinking of the consequences would pull such a stupid move. As for killing the hero's party members, no one would care about a few beginner saints when there was a goddamn uprising in the empire. But Axel was a different case. He was a chosen hero and Khan didn't plan to repeat history and follow in his predecessor's footsteps. If he could settle the matter without shedding his blood, then that would be the best option for him. Thus, 1 hour later, it brought them all to this present moment. Forfeit the artifact. Let us leave and maybe you'll live to fight another day. There are 9 of us and even if you're some chosen hero, you won't survive a battle to the death. Warned Khan with a serious expression. He had the upper hand now and he could use it finally get Vanessa out of here. However, Axel didn't bother responding to his warning and the next second, his body let out a scarlet-red aura and soon, a 10-meter-tall massive ethereal eye that glowed yellow and radiated a divine aura came to be. Axel then clasped his hands and closed his eyes. In the following moments, the divine eye expelled a yellow beam of light and illuminated the whole 2 kilometers of the region. Brat, that's said Rathnar in Khan's eye. Although he hadn't seen it, based on its appearance and his memories when he was given the choice of selecting divine abilities, Khan figured out what it was. Damn it! It's the sage's eye! He exclaimed. Ha ha ha! Who would have thought that you were the one I was looking for all this time? Spoke Axel with an insidious grin as he continued in a grim voice, sending shivers in Khan's spine. Hero of darkness. Khan and all members of his group stood with perplexed expressions and were shocked for the first time during their battle with the hero's party. The hero of fire just used a massive eyeball to reveal Khan's real identity as hero of darkness. And that too in front of Vanessa, the third princess of the Vulcan Empire. Boy, be careful. The sages I can give many details about you than just names. He probably knows about your strength, ranks of armors, weapons, and all the bloodlines along with their effects. The only things he can't know automatically about are your skills and fighting techniques unless you use them at least once. So all the skills you've used till now against him, he has seen through the flaws in all of them. However, the sages I can't reveal the identity of other divine abilities since they're also on par with it in terms of rank. Spoke Rathnar as he warned Khan to tread carefully from now. Good thing that I didn't go all out since the beginning. Otherwise, I would have revealed a lot of my skills and a few trump cards. This is also good. Means he might mistake some of my legendary rank skills for my divine abilities. I can still have a chance if it comes to a fight. Said Khan. To see that you were hiding so well under our nose all this time, I lost your trail after you came to Awakens. But never in my wildest imagination did I think that you'd quickly create an already established background as Throck Oakenshield's disciple. And even when our party created a scene in front of the company building, you never revealed your rank despite us provoking you. Rather, you let your goons take the lead. That was indeed clever, said Axel, explaining his side of the story. And it was indeed true in many ways. Khan established his background in just 4 days after coming to the Vulcan Empire. 1. He met Vanessa in the auction house. 2. He was dragging into the matters of blacksmithing duel. 3. He made a deal with Throck and turned him into an ally because of his situation with the second prince. That was indeed many times faster than anyone without any prior knowledge of a new place could do. And this ended up helping him hide perfectly, till this point. Hero of darkness? What the hell is he talking about, Khan? Asked Vanessa from 5 kilometers away. She just recovered from all of her injuries and started to amass some world energy in her body after being aided by Armin. I guess there's no reason to hide it any longer, replied Khan and glanced towards Vanessa's direction. I'm indeed the hero of darkness of this generation of summoned heroes, he declared without a second thought. And there was a good reason for not hiding or denying it. Tell me, Vanessa, does my origin as the new hero of darkness affect our relationship? What is your stand on this matter? He asked. First, he at least needed to know what she had to say. If she suddenly turned into an enemy, then he'd leave without a second thought. Even now, Khan was engaging in this battle only because of 2 reasons: to keep his identity secret and to protect Vanessa. But now that the truth about the former was already out in the open, he needed to reconsider things. Vanessa, on the other end, had a baffled and anxious expression. Her mind seemed to be experiencing many turbulent thoughts as her entire body almost froze. Vanessa kept thinking for 10 seconds, but inside her mind, she had thought for a couple of minutes given how fast the thought process of a saint was. And finally, she spoke with a resolute voice. You never wished to associate with me since the beginning. It was me taking the initiative to establish any form of partnership with you, and it was also me who voluntarily decided to be your friend. Spoke Vanessa with a thoughtful countenance. The matter of heroes, churches, and gods do not affect me or my life in any way. So be assured, if we manage to get out of here alive, your secret will stay safe with me, she affirmed. Khan was already accustomed to Vanessa because of their often meetings with each other. So it didn't take him a second to know that Vanessa meant every word of what she said. Khan only nodded in acknowledgement and then turned back to Axel. Tell me something. Why did you bring me here along with Hector and Vanessa? If your plan was to capture her alive and kill Hector, I don't see a reason why I should be brought into this matter, queried Khan. Oh, that. Well, I simply wanted to kill you in front of her, to break her mind, he replied while folding his hands. For some reason, Axel still acted like he didn't worry a bit if Khan was also a chosen hero, as if he was certain that no matter what happened, he would be able to kill the latter. Why? What made you think so? Asked Khan. Because you two are lovers. Shock. Other than the hero of fire, every single individual present inside this 50 kilometers radius battlefield was rooted on the spot and had their mouths wide open. After a few seconds, Khan looked at Vanessa while pointing out his left forefinger at Axel. "What the hell is he talking about?" he shouted. "How would I know? People are just making assumptions themselves. Even my father thought the same," said Vanessa as she shrugged her arms. "What the hell? Even the emperor thought the same?" he bellowed in disbelief. Khan then remembered how once Vanessa called him as her man in front of the heroes' party. Meanwhile, their friendship was already known to many at this point, so he linked that incident to the current predicament. So this misunderstanding actually stemmed because of her impulsive and wrongly chosen words. He was brought here because of a big confusion by coincidence, despite his best efforts to hide, because of not something he did but because Vanessa ran her mouth off in the wrong situations. Khan took a few moments as he absorbed this revelation. But suddenly his expression turned serious. "But even so, you said something about breaking her mind. What's that was about?" asked Khan as gave a skeptical gaze to Axel. "Well, now that no one is watching and I'm going to kill you and your allies anyway, I might as well tell you the truth," Axel said with an insidious grin and explained his reason. "Only after watching her lover die, she'd lose her will to fight after we seal her rank and her bloodline. After the church takes over this empire, she is to be wed to me and then I will become the new emperor. A chosen hero of God Hetrax. My reign would be unopposed. With her as my wife, my claim to the throne would also be legit. People don't want war. They just want to live their pathetic lives while feeling safe. They don't care who is the emperor and what's their background as long as their lives are better than the previous reign. The church had thought of everything after they were done killing Emperor Havi. If I'm not wrong, he should be already dead now," explained Axel. Khan and Vanessa finally understood why they were separated here. Killing Hector was the best choice since the emperor would also be dead. Rogis was shunned and had no claim to the throne because of the imperial decree by Havi himself. Thus, it left only Vanessa as part of the imperial family who qualified to be the next ruler. And by marrying her, Axel would indeed have the claim if she was sealed and could not protect the empire. All of this was indeed a meticulous plan. But there was another reason why I wanted Vanessa. Suddenly, Axel spoke with a lecherous gaze, even from 7 kilometers afar. His malevolent gaze was easily noticed by Vanessa. Khan stepped in midway, having a grim expression. "What other reason?" he asked, tightening his grip on the hilt of Lucifer. "What else can women do in life besides cook and satisfy men's needs? That's what they were born to do anyway," said Axel unapologetically. Vanessa clenched her fists, her eyes turning bloodshot red. "I have admired your beauty for a long time, ever since I was brought here. I was also a crown prince in the previous world. So it is only natural that a princess would become my slave." "Ha ha ha," Axel declared, his evil eyes and laughter echoing throughout the surroundings. After hearing this reason given by Axel, Khan only looked back at Vanessa and asked, "Tell me, what do you want me to do with him? I will not back down from whatever decision you make." Vanessa was thoroughly infuriated after hearing Axel's true intentions. She was a woman of pride and honor. Everything she achieved in her life was through her own hard work. If not for her condition and inability to fight anymore due to the weakened state after using her bloodline transformation, Vanessa would have lunged and attacked Axel without waiting for another moment. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Khan awaited her reply and was ready to act instantly. He too was angered to his core, but in the end, it was Vanessa's right to make the final decision. The next moment, Vanessa opened her eyes and declared in a tyrannical voice filled with rage and hatred, "Kill him." Khan faced Axel with eyes full of hatred and disdain after the latter told him about what he'll do to Vanessa after killing Khan. But the current situation was very dire for him at the same time. His identity as Hero of Darkness was exposed, and there was a chosen hero as a witness on top of it. Even if Vanessa chose to side with Khan, and they somehow managed to leave this isolation barrier, Axel would inform the church and soon, the entire empire would be after him. The church could also use this news in their favor, saying that the princess is allying with the Hero of Darkness and thus, Their crusade against the imperial rule is righteous. On the other hand, Khan thought of Vanessa as a friend at this point, and after seeing how she tried to let him escape even by risking her life while fighting against the heroes' party by herself, he already held her in high regard. Kill him! Vanessa's rage-filled voice reverberated in the surroundings, and Khan also got ready for a fight. Before, he was only looking for a safe way out, but now due to these two factors, one was circumstantial while the other was personal, Khan decided that no matter what, Hero of Fire must be killed. All right then, you heard the lady. Looks like you're not leaving out of here alive, said Khan, and not only him but the 7 subordinates also brandished their weapons. Ha ha ha! You're a fool, Salvatore. Do you really think you can kill me with just this measly group of yours? The sages I showed me what kind of creatures they are. Monsters posing as hybrids and demi-humans. You must look down on me too much to think that I can't massacre all of you, spoke Axel haughtily. Your entire crew is gone, and so is that 4th stage Fireborn Saint. You can't escape from us, spoke Khan as he gathered space force around Lucifer's blade. And that's where you're wrong. I never needed those weaklings in the first place. With them watching, I would not be able to use all of the divine abilities that required me to get into my true form, revealed Axel. True form? What the hell are you talking about? Khan readied himself for a battle but didn't attack. He felt like he was missing some key information here. However, in the following moment, Axel's entire figure started glowing yellow, and soon, his body started enlarging. His flesh turned bright red. Crack! Crack! Axel's body started deforming and bones started cracking as his entire figure grew in size at an extremely fast rate. However, despite the immense pain, Axel had a wide and sinister smile on his face. After a dozen seconds, the layer of human skin started tearing from the inside and a demonic and horrifying face appeared. On his back, 2 ginormous bat-like wings came out and spread widely. Yet there seemed no end to his transformation. But soon, Khan stood rooted as multiple faces of females came out of the flesh of Axel's ginormous figure that was still growing. Let me go! Spare me, Lord Axel! No! Stop! Please! Please let me go! I have a son. I have a husband. I have a family who's waiting for me. I beg you. I beg you. Please let me go. Soon, the atmosphere of the 10 kilometers radius turned grim and horrifying as hundreds and then thousands of loud wails and screams of women continuously filled the battlefield. All of them were either begging for mercy or trying to protect themselves while suffering some sort of torture. At least that was what Khan and the group could infer from the voices they heard. Boy, those are the souls of these women. Wasn't he supposed to be a human? Asked Rathnar. Those are all women. It's as if he ate them and their flesh is now part of his body, spoke Vanessa from behind. Little did Rathnar and Vanessa know that their guess hit the mark. In my world, human flesh is a delicacy. Males of my species eat women and females eat men, spoke Axel, who grew horns on his head, no longer looking like a human. Aren't you a human yourself? Asked Khan with a constricted expression as he was still amassing enough space force to end the battle in a single attack. Me? Ha ha ha. You're wrong. I look like a human because I have their bloodline and souls from thousands of women I ate. That allowed me to bypass the restrictions to enter this world when Hetrax chose me as his hero, revealed Axel. That bastard Hetrax. He used this guy's ability as a cheat to bypass the restriction of choosing a human hero. And if he can absorb the bodies and souls, means he has other abilities as well, said Rathnar. But this human form is nothing but a restriction. I can use only 2 of my divine abilities in it. As for the rest, I'll show you why you'll die, declared Axel, and finally ended his transformation. Soon, multiple white archaic formations appeared around his body, and the following moment, a suction force appeared at the center. Around the corners of the 50 kilometers radius battlefield were the fallen members of the heroes' party. A white orb with a bluish hue appeared out of them and quickly charged towards these white formations. Don't tell me, this bastard chose the Soul Eater? Exclaimed Khan. Just now, he mentioned the divine ability named Soul Eater. Khan had the eidetic memory, so he still remembered the use of this divine ability. It gave the user extra lives by absorbing the soul of the strong deceased entities. But it worked only when the soul belonged to someone who could use world energy, in other words, only a recently dead saint. It was different from Axel's own abilities, where he absorbed someone's soul by eating them first. This divine could not only directly absorb someone's soul, but quickly turned it into a life force equivalent to having another life. Khan didn't choose this ability because he was a different case, and back then, he didn't even know what saints were or how important world energy was. If he had chosen this ability even with his precarious situation where the whole Vantria was hunting him, he wouldn't have been able to make use of it in any way and could have died before even becoming a saint himself. But their current situation also wasn't favorable either, because this meant that they weren't fighting with Axel alone. Their current situation basically meant that they were facing 8 Hero of Fire,